On today's special episode of Homeworthy, we're bringing you inside the beautifully curated and stylish homes of 4 interior designers. First, we visit a colonial home in Bedford, New York, thoughtfully renovated with period-appropriate elements, bold color, and playful patterns. Then, we travel to Los Angeles and step inside a serene and sophisticated home designed for entertaining with a palette of soft neutrals and artful pops of color. Next, we see a Parisian-inspired townhouse in New Jersey featuring intricate decorative moldings, Italian fireplaces, and sweeping views of the New York City skyline. And finally, we tour a bright Arizona oasis with airy interiors, a lush garden, and a luxurious pool. You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Brittany. Welcome to my home here in New York. Come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, I'm Brittany Bromley. I'm an interior designer, and welcome to my home here in Bedford, New York. When I first saw this home, it was 2009, and it had a lot of deferred maintenance. Unfortunately, the previous owners had lived here for 40 years, and I think as people are apt to do, you sort of stop seeing the issues. And so there were a lot of things that were necessary to both bring it up to date, but also to sort of make it something that was aesthetically pleasing. So we did about 6 months of renovations, a lot of which we did ourselves, which was lots of fun and very illuminating as to what is required to make something like this truly shine. And I looked at it as a 30-year project. I wasn't daunted by the amount of deferred maintenance, but certainly if I were to see it now as opposed to 15 years ago, I might have had a little bit less energy to put towards it. So this home dates back to 1790, which is just about 2 years after the burning of Bedford, New York. So it was one of the few structures in town that actually survived. And as a result of that, it is a home, like most old homes, that was added on to as the requirements of the people occupying it changed. So it started as a very classic center hall colonial, 2 up and 2 down. And we actually have some really amazing character details from that era, one of which would have been their primary source of sort of cooking fire, which is the massive dining fireplace area, which still has a very cool old, what you would have used to put like a soup tureen on and off of the fire. But the house, because it had so many different iterations, there's not a single straight line in sight. The entire space, I mean, my wallpaper guy wants to kill me. There's a 4.5-inch difference between one side of the kitchen and the other. And, you know, if you dropped a marble, you'd never find it again. So here we are in the living room, and this space, believe it or not, was probably in the best condition of any room in the home. So one of the challenges was, because it wasn't in the same sort of sense of deterioration as some of the others, was to reimagine it in a way that made sense for us. So one of the things about this room that I really loved is that it has these incredible old, very wide plank wood floors. And we have that in several of the rooms of this home on this first floor. But this room to me felt something about how large it was and the expanse of it. These floors almost felt like they needed to be considered separately. And so the design concept for this room started to come about as a result of figuring out what I wanted these floors to feel like. My amazing, incredible decorative painter, Mary Mead Evans, and she did a Parquet de Versailles. We worked very closely to figure out what sort of tone this floor would be, and it is the only room in our home that has this light wash on it. And I wanted it to feel, in a sense, almost Parisian. And so not only was the pattern selected for that reason, but also then from there, because every decision narrows your next decision when it comes to design, that was also how I decided to do the boiserie on the walls. So the walls in this room are done with applique wood molding in a boiserie finish. And then this paint color was also done as a decorative paint color. And anyone that's ever worked with me as a painter knows that I like to see about 95 options before I settle on that which is perfect, and this was no different. So God bless Mary for sticking with me on this, because this sort of pale peachy color to me is one of the most flattering colors in the world, and it feels both light and bright and somehow modern. And because every decision then narrows the next, I felt that the upholstery in this room needed to be strong enough that it could stand up to the quietness of the walls. So I started in this area with the concept of having a dark sofa. And I chose a very traditional George Smith sofa. And to me, they're the most beautiful sort of old-fashioned, wonderful, traditional, and it's covered in a really amazing chocolate brown mohair, which is really tactile and really comfortable, and also gives it the interest of when things are sort of moved around on something like mohair, it gives it a sheen, and that's a really interesting thing to me. The hero fabric in this room, which is what we call sort of the multicolor fabric that brings everything else in the space together, is this gorgeous silk from Vanessa. Vanessa is one of my most favorite fabric houses. They have the most incredible things. And to me, this is an incredible fabric. Just disturb Banksy here to show you. Because it's almost painterly in the way that it is a hand done set of florals. And because it has all of these colors in it, and yet it has a very quiet oyster silk background, it allows us to sort of use all of those colors throughout the room. So this is the main area. And then over here, we have my collection, which is what we call when we're an interior designer and we can't stop shopping, of all of the things that I really love. And so to me, that means things like tortoiseshell boxes, opaline glass, and lots of sort of what we refer to in the business as objet, which means that if I see it and I want it, I get to add it to the collection. And that's very special to me. And the idea in a room like this, where everything is very pale, to me, of using something dark like this table, it's a very grounding effect. And you'll see throughout this space that I've used black in that way to pull sort of the lightness of some of these other things back to the ground and ground them. So you'll see like these beautiful lampshades all have little bits of black. And then our favorite chair, this is one of my most favorite things in the whole house, is covered in this gorgeous quadrille fabric. And it just makes me happy every time I see it. And this is the vista that I see when I walk by this room, is this chair from the hallway. So it makes me very happy. These are antique French bergère. And to me, there's really never not a good case to be made for animal print. And this animal print, because there are many, happened to work perfectly with this sort of pearl oyster color of the walls and this deep chocolate brown. And again, because it's a velvet, it does have the ability to change a little bit in sheen. And that to me makes it more interesting, because use and patina and things like that are always things to which I gravitate. I also have a real fondness for, and therefore quite a collection of antique oil paintings. And this room is a room that sort of displays my fondness for these things. So throughout the space, you'll see these beautiful oil paintings that I've been collecting for quite some time. This mantelpiece was actually quite controversial, believe it or not. When I bought this home, this is the mantel that was in place. And there was a lot of discussion around, because it is a Central Hall Colonial dating back to 1790, whether this particular wood piece and this detailing would have been used in that era. And the answer is no. But to me, what's really lovely about having a home that has had multiple iterations and has expanded throughout history is the idea that that historical aspect to it is layers that are added on top of it. So my goal when we restored this home wasn't to bring it back to feeling as though it were 1790. It was to display the fact that this is a home that has stood the test of time. And then to further play with sort of proportion and scale, I found another wonderful old oil painting, and this one happens to be of a little girl. I have two little girls, and so we always say that this is my girl with flowers. So both of my girls really love this. One of the things we get to do a lot here in Bedford is take walks in the preserve. And so this is actually an old mercury glass vase, and all of these feathers are feathers that I've found throughout the course of my time here in Bedford. So they're a little bit of a trophy, and I love them. And then I'm also always very drawn to natural textures like horn and this sort of natural color variation associated with that. So this pair of horns is an antique set that I bought many, many years ago. And I have to be honest, they have a beautiful silver base, which requires regular polishing if you're someone who doesn't like patina. I happen to love patina, and therefore they only get done every once in a while, because I like the idea that they don't feel terribly new and that they are something that is a living finish. This dog statue actually belonged to my grandmother Gigi, who had really beautiful homes and really incredible style, and probably genetically gave me more information in that regard than I'm even aware of. But this was something that belonged to her, and she passed away when I was in my early 20s, and this little guy has been with me from every home I've ever had since then, and because of that will always have sort of a pride of place wherever I am. One of the things about a home to me that is important is that it not feel too precious and that it not feel too done, because the concept behind what I would like to do and what I do as it relates to just having published a book titled this is that there is such a thing as relaxed elegance. And so even though I have lampshades in this room that are 100% silk and hand pin tucked and have all of this detail, I also love the juxtaposition between something like a hand-blocked batik. And so the ability for me to wave something like that into this space and ground it with this inlaid black and cream lamp, to me makes everything in the room more interesting. On this wall, we have another thing to which I gravitate and therefore have a nice collection, and that is reverse painted églomese. Églomese is an incredible mirror technique where you reverse paint a mirror, and so you get not only this gorgeous thing that they've created, but you also get where they have removed the back of that mirror and where it is something where it's still solid. So it gives the entire piece of art this really interesting, again, patina, to which I obviously gravitate. This little corner of the space in our living room, I will say, was a design challenge. And I like to say that there are no challenges. It's more about opportunity. And I wanted it to function in a way that would allow, when I was entertaining, for people to sort of break away from the main seating area and have sort of what we would refer to as a tete-a-tete, which means like a little private conversation in a space where the entire group is not gathered, but without leaving the room. So this is a custom corner piece, which I had upholstered in this beautiful chocolate brown and white Schumacher silk. And then I did a bullion fringe, and these pillows obviously are the hero fabric in our room, which is the Benison, and they have this incredible decor de Paris trim on them, and it is, we call it the caterpillar in our office because we love it so much. Comes in many wonderful colors, but it's very tactile, and I love that about it. Another thing that was important to me about this space in general here in the living room, but also most of my home, is that we don't have a lot of overhead light. This room doesn't have any for the most part. And so having various sources of light at different heights is very important to the overall ambiance. And so instead of having to worry about having another set of side tables here to serve this, having these floor lamps with the green silk shades eliminated that problem and gave us the ability to have this function as a space that was lit appropriately. So one of the opportunities about this space is that because this home had been added onto over time, what had started out as a much larger living room, which was entirely rectangular in nature and expanded out like this, ended up being carved up by a previous owner so that we could accommodate some modern amenities, for which I'm grateful, like washer dryer. But it meant that this room was no longer functioning in the same space. And so these two rooms are separate rooms in the sense that they have different functions in our lives, but they are adjoining, and putting a door into either would have changed sort of the flow. And so my solution to that was to use our incredible hero fabric from Venison and create a very sort of dramatic doorway using this drape fabric. But one of the things that was important to me is that these two spaces have different color palettes, but also be able to always sort of relate to one another because they are open. And so what you'll see when we move into this room is that we chose to do this side of the curtain in this gorgeous silk in the Venison, and then we chose to do the reverse side in this green gingham, so that both, when seen from the opposite room, make sense. So now we're in the adjoining space to the formal living room, and this is by far sort of one of the more interesting parts of our home as it relates to color scheme. I think you probably know by now that I'm not afraid of color, and this room demonstrates that aptly. The first thing that I chose for this space is this marbleized wallpaper from Lee Joffa. It is such an interesting combination of colors that you don't always see together. And I've always loved marbleized fabrics and papers and books because it creates such a beautiful organic movement to it. This is not a large room, and as you can see, a lot of this room is doors and windows. And so the ability to have this paper sort of hold its own against all of that negative space was very important. Because this has such an interesting mix of colors, it allowed me to sort of go nuts in the Crayola box as it relates to what we did in this space. So the first thing I did was to choose this really dark green, but what you'll note about this color green, which it took me again several tries to figure out in the sample department, is that it has a lot of yellow in it and very little blue. And because of that, it doesn't read as a Kelly. It's much more olive, or as the case may be, since this is the name, more of a bonsai. And it gives us a little bit warmer, richer feeling than something that's more traditionally Kelly green might do. From there, I layered in my most favorite color, other than verdigris. Don't ask my poor children who had to learn how to spell that for all their like kindergarten reviews. They all know it by heart now though, is this incredible Pierre Frey saffron velvet. And it was really important to me, because this room is often viewed from the formal living room, that this space be framed out in a way where these curtains were doing a lot of work in here. And this bright color and this sort of intense color saturation is really important as far as how this room functions. Next up on the hit parade is our incredible Lee Joffa fabric. So this sofa is the perfect size, and this is a custom piece that I had designed. And I wanted this to be a space where we could sort of retire after dinner, have drinks. When a few people have gone home and the party gets a little bit smaller and maybe a little bit more interesting, it lets everybody sort of sit in this more intimate space. So I wanted to be able to enjoy it with my children, but I also wanted to be able to hang out with friends in here. So this space was conceived with that in mind. And one of the things that I do quite often, which I think is very functional and therefore is one of the things that we probably do most for other people, is we created an ottoman that's firm enough for us to put a drink down on, but soft enough for us to put our feet up on. And because this is a tight space, you sort of have to think about the functionality of the space in addition to the aesthetic. And so what we often do is create a custom trivet tray, as we've done here, so that when we have lots of people in here and some people have their feet up, we've got some place we can put a drink down, and we've got some additional sort of space for entertaining purposes. One of the other things for which I'm well known and therefore have profligate amounts in my home is patterned lampshades. This particular set really spoke to me because not only does it have this very specific green, but it is also pulling in a bit of the saffron color. And I love that about it. What you'll notice here is one of many in my home. Have a real love for needlepoint pillows. This one happens to illustrate my point perfectly, which is too much of a good thing is wonderful. So that is something that is always sitting there and frankly quite true. In addition to that, one of the things that I like to do when I have a space that has a lot of negative space, which is what happens when you have a large window, is I like to hang something either on top of it or adjacent to it so that it gives you sort of a frame of reference for the space itself. In this particular room, I've chosen one of my favorite things. This is a paper mache mirror by Casa Gusto. And I think what is so wonderful about it, besides this great color and the detail and the fact that it's 3D, is that it gives you a frame of reference in the negative space around this window. And so that makes it probably a lot more interesting than it would be if it were on something that was solid. As I explained, this room functions as an addendum to the formal living room. And because of that, we did choose some of the colors so that they would be repetitious. But maybe the most important thing that I did to combine these two spaces is to use the same color in high gloss lacquer on this ceiling as I did on the walls in the main room. So those two sorts of senses of connection, besides this beautiful open entryway with these curtains, I think make this room feel separate from, but also related to, its neighbor. So here we are in the main event, which is the center hall of the Center Hall Colonial here in our home in Bedford. And I would say one of the things about this space that to me was very important is the idea that because the entertaining rooms are off of this, that this room felt sort of traditionally formal in the sense that I wanted you to know that you'd arrived. And so one of the ways that we accomplished that was by having this floor painted out in a very traditional checkerboard. This is something that, you know, would have been done in the day, often in a material like marble, so that you had this sort of elevated feel. In our case, we have really wonderful old wood floors, and so for us it was natural for it to stay this chocolate brown and then to weave in this sort of creamy white that didn't feel too cold. One of the other things I did in this space, because it is very much a connector, but I also want that sense of arrival, is that I chose to do this really terrific Schumacher wallpaper, which has a little bit of reflectivity to it, which to me is very important because, again, this is one of the few overhead lights in my home. So most of the time when you're seeing these wall treatments, you're relying on light at a certain level to sort of carry you through. And this gives a really nice reflectivity with the sconces. This is one of my most favorite pieces ever. It is an antique French baking cabinet, and in its day it would have been used to sort of show like amazing fresh pastries and croissants and breads and things which had just been baked that day. In my case, it serves both a utilitarian function and also a decorative function, and that is that we keep a lot of our silver in here because I always just think it's more interesting to have a little bit of glint and interest. This holds not only things which are recently acquired and beautiful, but also things which have real sentimental value. And some of the things that we like to display here that I happen to have just picked up here are my baby cup from when I was younger, which fittingly reads the big event. My silver rattle and the first silver dollar that I got when I lost my front teeth. So barely any time has passed since then. One of the other things about this space is that this door, which is a traditional center hall colonial door, is actually one single piece of woodwork. So this entire casing, the windows around it, everything about this would have to be taken out or put back in one single piece, which just simply isn't done anymore. And so I used a heat gun to bring this door back from whence it had come, which was about 9 layers of paint, so that we could get to some of the beautiful molding and woodwork and architectural detail, which would have been more appropriate to its heritage. One of the other things I love about this little space, tiny and mighty though it may be, is the way that it connects the more formal spaces in my house. And so having things that sort of play with the idea of being relaxed and formal at the same time is always interesting to me. So I've chosen a really beautiful olive wood carved chair, which again I love because of the interest in the negative and positive space. I've covered it in a pretty precious material. Just ask my children, who are not allowed to put wet umbrellas down on it. But then we've sort of played with the idea of it being a much more relaxed space by having these really beautiful paper mache from Casa Gusto, which have this almost sculptural feeling to them and a much more natural sort of rustic feeling. Additionally, this is the center hall of our home, and so this staircase is a main thoroughfare. And so in addition to being something which is required to be picturesque, it also has to take a real beating. And so having a natural texture on these stairs like this jute is very important to me, and I think it keeps it from feeling too precious. One thing that I detail in my book, which I think I'm probably very well known for, at least by my team, is that when I can't find something that I want, I make it. So in this instance, I had a vision for the color scheme that I wanted to have in this hallway. And this was this deep chocolate brown and then my favorite saffron yellow. And so I could not find any sort of ribbons or anything that existed that would work for this concept. So I made my own with a hot glue gun. I love the feeling of being the steward of a property that will endure long after I've gone on. And I think that this home has that feeling to it. We are able to love it and give it the attention it needs today, but in 30 or 40 years, I have a feeling that somebody else will be doing that. And the understanding that this house is so much older than we are and has seen so much more history than we will ever see is something I love. It makes me feel like we have, sort of a joyful obligation to make sure that it continues. One of the things that I love most about this house is the sort of authentic vintage charm. And vintage is something that applies to after a certain date, and this certainly is older than most things that we term vintage. But one of the things that we loved about it was the historic old glass in all of the windows. And as a result of that, we have extremely high heating bills because there is not a single window in sight that isn't probably older than 75 years. And it gives us that really beautiful, wavy old glass feeling. I would say that my sense of style ends up being that to which I respond. And so maybe it sort of defies categorization, but I have been called in the past a grand millennial and sort of classic with a kick. I love traditional design, but I am always looking for ways to make things that are traditional and therefore sometimes have a connotation of being staid or older, feel a little bit more young and vibrant. And I think we do that most often with pattern play and color. So welcome to the family room and also my most favorite hallway in our home, which happens to be this high gloss coral lacquer. I absolutely love this color. As you probably know by now, I absolutely love color, period, but I just find it to be so incredibly flattering and so beautiful, and I love the way it mixes with the chocolate brown and the cream of the floors. In our family room, which sort of began its life as the master bedroom for the people that lived here before we did, it was a very, very different feeling. There was a wall of closets, there was a skinny little window in the middle of the wall. There was a whole bunch of sort of faulty sliders. And one of the things that we did in this home is to put a really large number of French doors all the way around all of the first floor rooms on this home, because the gardens of this home are one of the things that really spoke to me when we were looking at purchasing it. So the ability to sort of open the doors and walk right out to the terrace all the way around the house was very important to me. This is one of the few rooms in the home where I haven't used a tremendous amount of color. So I used a Lee Joffa fabric as our hero fabric in this room, and it has these sort of really interesting greens and blues and a little bit of this natural color. And so to me, I wanted this room to feel quiet and sort of like a restful respite. When it's not a dark and gloomy day, this room gets an extraordinary amount of light. And so it was easy to sort of conceptualize it in a way that made it feel light and bright, and I didn't have to use a ton of color in here. One of the most important design aspects of this room that I chose to do is I chose to do a hand-painted ceiling. And I went back and forth quite a bit as it relates to how we were going to achieve my vision. And what ended up settling me on this wallpaper, which has this beautiful sort of antiqued mirror silver foil finish, is that it allowed me to cover the entire space without a lot of seams in the paper. When we were looking at doing it in a traditional sense with plate glass mirror, there were going to be a lot of cuts in the mirror, and that wasn't something that I wanted. So I did this silver foil Philip Jeffries, and then I had my decorative painter hand paint the treillage in a way that allowed it to feel as though it's shadowed. And that sort of brightness and interest to the ceiling took away what some people might have said was a real issue with this room, which was a lot of ceiling height, and actually made it, in my opinion, something that functions as an asset to the space instead of a detraction. So the hero of this room, other than our multi-fabric, is this massive ottoman, which was so large we almost had to take the doors off their hinges to get it in here, and the last part of it had to be constructed en situ. But it is the most functional, amazing piece of furniture maybe that we have in our whole house. Not only is it, once again, sort of firm enough for you to put your drink or your sippy, as my girls call them, down, but it's also soft enough for all of us to put our feet up on. And I wanted it to be something that was reachable from every single seat in this room. And so it had to sort of be almost as large as the continent of the United States, and it functions in an amazing way for us. One of the things about having an ottoman this size is that you then also have to have an almost equal number of interesting things on the ottoman. So because I'm a designer and I'm constantly interested in this sort of thing, I have a really large collection of design books. So I chose to do sort of interesting piles around the space that had these like sort of wonderful, interesting color variation to them and interest. And then I've layered onto them things that are special to me. So I have this really incredible porcupine quill box, which is an antique box. I also have these incredible quartz sculptures, which my children think are very funny because they're precious mushrooms, but I love them and I love the color. And then one other thing I would say for which I'm very well known is that I'm not afraid of a large flower arrangement. So in this room, we always have something that's got some interest and some height. Right now it's spring, and so we have flowering quince, but when it's not this incredible and available to us, I always do something like either a dried eucalyptus, and then I always have lots of really interesting plants potted around the room with lots of different color variation, because I think it's important to sort of live with greenery, and you'll see that throughout the home. Another aspect of this room, which was different than some other spaces in the home, is that it doesn't have a wood floor. And so the decision for us to keep this a brick floor, which is a traditional sort of sunroom application of that material, and then to cover it in this incredible cotton custom durry. I love this durry so much. My amazing friends at From Jaipur with Love had this made for me. We went back several times about thread color, and this color just happened to be the exact thing that we needed. And something about a cotton durry, as opposed to some of the other things that I've done in the home that I think is really lovely, is that it always feels very relaxed. And this is probably the most relaxed room in our home, and we spend the most time in it, so I wanted it to be comfortable. Conversely, I also wanted to remember who I was, and so I had to have lots of different things in this room, and one of the things that I chose, which probably was a bit of a head scratcher in the beginning, but I think it's worked out, is this beautiful inlaid French chest. And so to me, what I love again is a juxtaposition of something that's very informal, like a hand block fabric. And then with that, you have something that has really interesting tonal variation because of the species of marble, and then really interesting detail in the woodwork, both in terms of color and also in terms of the fact that it has this very feminine, organic shape to it. This room has such a beautiful view out into our gardens that it took me about 12 years to figure out what artwork I could put on the walls that would stand up to the view outside. And I could not love the art more. They are these incredible framed prints. They're done in this seagrass matting, this incredible framing. The frame itself is a piece of art. Again, these are from my best friends at Casa Gusto, and they have such incredible taste. And I was so thrilled to be able to use these all the way around the room because I think they're interesting enough that they stand up to the view of the great outdoors from all the rest of the French doors and windows. So right off of this hallway, we have my favorite bathroom in the house. The reason it's my favorite is because it feels like a garden. And because I have so much color saturation in the adjoining hallway, which is the coral lacquer hallway, I wanted to play off of that color, but I also wanted to give you a little bit of a moment of relief. So I chose this incredible Pierre Fray wallpaper, which has some of those colors, but then also has this really deep, dark feeling, which I love. I did custom sconces, and honestly I couldn't decide between black and white, so I've ended up with striped. And depending on the day, sometimes we'll have the black facing out and sometimes we'll have the white. That's just a little bit about my insanity. And then everything else about this space just feels to me very much like a jewel box, and I love that about it. It's the one room of a home that you're almost always guaranteed to have a guest use, and that's the powder room. So it should be something special. One of the things that I would say is sort of consistent throughout my home is a mix of high-low. So this particular vanity is nothing special. It is just a woodwork piece, which I had painted in a lacquer black, but because I can't help myself and I look at hardware as jewelry, I have these incredible pieces of hardware from P.E. Guerin, which is just an incredible company in New York that does the finest, most gorgeous hardware. And I never, ever, ever come into this bathroom that I'm not happy that I splurged on this moment of luxury. So I'm a really interesting mix of left brain and right brain, because while I am a very creative person, I'm also very right brain in the sense that I'm very organized and very sort of by the book. And so the idea that in my current profession, which I feel like really is a calling, that's a place where I can use both sides of my sort of propensity has been a really wonderful thing for me. I began my life as a residential real estate agent in New York City. And now looking back in hindsight, a lot of the things that made me such a successful real estate broker, which were the ability to sort of communicate with my clients, understand their needs, and then match them to an appropriate property, are the same things that allow me to do what I do today. And I would say in that initial career, whether I realized it at that point or not, the idea of saying, maybe we could just change the swing of this door, or if you just took this wall down, then you would be able to understand how these spaces connect to each other. That was probably above and beyond that of what a normal broker might do, and sort of dipping a toe into what ended up becoming my life. So here we are in my dining room, which my children call Narnia, because it is covered in a completely sort of enveloping way in a 3D boiserie, which is done by my dearest friends at Casa Gusto. So they had just started working with paper mache with the idea of using it as wall treatment and ceiling treatment, and they were doing a room in their shop, and I saw it. And absolutely fell in love with it. And I'd been trying to figure out what sort of iteration was next for this dining room. And so Casa Gusto and Augie and I came up with this sort of tree of life pattern, which is a 3D set of branches and boiserie panels, which actually travels all the way around the space. And so not only does it have that three-dimensional aspect, which makes it really interesting and makes it feel almost magical, but it's a really complicated and incredible process that they've perfected, where, you know, this entire room was made in separate panels. There's 67 of them, and then pieced together on site. And so originally I had thought that I might do this in a color, but the actual natural color of the paper mache is so appealing to me. It's really quiet, it's really calm, and it's very warm. And so once I sort of saw what it was looking like, then from there we decided just to accent it with a very French blue. And the reason I say a French blue is because it has quite a bit of yellow in it again. So anything that has more red in it that is a blue tends to read more like a cobalt. This has a lot more sort of yellow and green in it, and so it's a much cooler, almost sort of Delft pale blue. And that's really the only color in this space other than the ceiling, which is also paper mache. One of the most important design elements of this room is actually something that we decided to do when we were installing these wall treatments, and that is that throughout my home you'll see many beams which are both load-bearing and historical, and therefore cannot be moved. This room is one of the few rooms that didn't have that, and so when we conceptualized this space and we're giving it sort of a new axis on which to frame out, we thought of the fireplace as being the center, even though it wasn't traditionally that. And so we put this beam in decoratively, as they say, because it's not load-bearing at this point in time, and created sort of a vibe so that when we do walk from here into the kitchen, you'll understand that those beams are repeated throughout the course of the first floor of this home. One of the other things I love about this room so much is these antique chairs. They're one of the first things that I ever purchased as a young adult. They're covered in a faux alligator, and they are sort of a glee or like a grayed out white French chair, and I love them. They have always felt to me like almost a little bit masculine, which I love, and I'm crazy about them. For this room, one of the other things I wanted to do is sort of play up the way that we're balancing masculine and feminine. And so to me, that was choosing a very traditional, like a ticking stripe. This happens to be Schumacher, one of my very favorites, Cherie stripe. And then doing something with it that was more interesting in the sense that it's a traditional skirted cloth, and then at the bottom, it's got this really flouncy, interesting ruffle, which to me makes it much more interesting than it would be if it were just a seam. This piece is one of my most favorite pieces. I love it so much that I'm never 100% sure if I want to cover it in something, and it is historical, and so right now it's got this great sort of loose applique of this silk, and I like the fact that it's something different on the sides and the back than it is on the cushion. That's one of the things I like best about it. This space was originally what they would have used for all of their sort of cooking purposes in the home, and so it's got this amazing huge fireplace has really amazing old cool hardware. And then you'll probably note it's also got some really large logs in the fireplace. We could not find anything that made sense. Every piece of wood that I put into this fireplace looked like it had been eaten up. And so this is actually an amazing set of wood which was brought back from Vermont in the back of a car and almost caused the bar not to make it back because it was so low and so heavy, and those are going to live here for the rest of their lives because they can never be moved. So the fireplace mantle, the side pieces are again the paper mache, and then this is a really simple shelf that I chose because I wanted this just to sort of go away. It gives me a place to sort of have interesting things that I love, like this collection of silver. And then very purposefully, this is a piece of antiqued mirror, which was installed as a trumeau behind the paper mache. I didn't want it to be a furniture element. I wanted it to be an architectural element. Similar to that, I sort of wanted to play with different experiences of light. And so even though this is a colonial home, I fell in love with this vintage pair of Nearman Weeks, which are these incredible sort of almost brass art deco beaded sconces, which to me just, again, this room feels a little bit magical at all times of day, but particularly in the evening. And there's something about this light which almost feels like you're underwater. It's really special. One of the other things I love in this room is this clock. It is such a beautiful old French clock. I love it so much. It's Italianate, so even though it's French, it has an Italian sort of heritage in the way that it was created. And I will tell you that occasionally, even though it's non-functional and largely decorative, it decides to chime in the middle of the night or in the middle of the afternoon and scare all of us to death. So it hasn't given up the ghost, so we won't give up on it either. One of the things about this room that is different than any other room in my home is that I've chosen to light it from a couple of different vantage points. So not only do I have the sconces over the fireplace and the chandelier over the main table, but because this wall treatment is 3D in nature, one of the things I love most about it is lighting it from underneath. So I have these spotlights set out around the room, and most of them are in corners and they highlight interesting things, but it gives you this really great shadow play and reinforces the 3D nature of this branch. I love a bar cart. I love it even more when it used to be a French gardening table, as this one did. I'm a big lover of crystal and silver, which you've probably picked up on by now. And so I love old school cut crystal decanters. I love silver with patina. These are some beautiful glasses, which my parents gave to me that they got in Venice. Very, very wonderful. And then the second shelf of this is sort of a utilitarian function. I like baskets, I like linens, I like all of those things. And so having them sort of all here in one place makes it both usable and to me like an interesting adjunct. As it relates to entertaining, I would say that I both enjoy a casual mix and also really love it to feel elevated. So ways that I would say that it's almost always elevated are I love an amazing floral, always have really well starched linens. I love china, have a really crazy china collection. But then at the same time, I will often, choose to serve something that is sort of a more traditional homey feeling. Like, we may be eating in this beautiful boiserie Narnia fairyland, but we may well be having like a chicken pot pie. Oh, I love decorating my own home. We call it the test kitchen. And I always say to my clients and my team, your own home is the only place where you really get to do what you want to do. And so for me, it is absolute freedom to scratch an itch with a particular fabric that I love, or try a color scheme that it might be more difficult to convince a client is a good idea. And because of that, and because it's so personal in nature, it feels like not only an expression of what I would like to do professionally, but an expression of who I am personally. So here we are in the kitchen of my 1790s Colonial, and I phrase it that way because you'll note that this is the room in the home that has the lowest ceilings. This is a room of our home that obviously is the beating heart, and it gets a ton of action and a ton of traffic. And it was never going to be sort of a modern, gray, white, expansive kitchen. And so a few years ago, I decided that instead of feeling like a kitchen, it might need to feel like a library. And so I painted all the cabinetry and the woodwork in this whole room black, which was a real leap of faith and one that I've never regretted. I also did the countertops in a really interesting marble. It's a Calcutta viola, and much like its name implies, it does have a little bit of purple and blue in it, which I find really interesting, and it has a lot of movement, which to me, because there isn't very much stone in this room, was very important. I also chose to do our main kitchen table in a painted decorative finish. Our incredible decorative painter here in New York, Shelley Denning, did this tortoise shell, which has a lot of movement and interest in color and tonal variation. And then the chairs around it are obviously sort of a familiar kitchen workhorse, which is the old school gingham. What ties all of these colors together for me is the choice of the wallpaper. This is, some might say, the least practical thing I've ever done in my life, which is put a white silk wallpaper in my kitchen. But this was several years ago now, and I have never regretted it. I love the way that this wallpaper not only has that texture because it's the silk, but it also has such an interesting palette of a warm brown, a charcoal gray, a deep black, and then this really interesting multi-set of blues. So you have cornflower, a little bit of Delft, and then even like a little bit of teal in the darkest accent. And to me, it's just, I absolutely love it. Every single day when I walk down here, it makes me happy. So not only do we have this sort of built-in area which allows you to take advantage of as much space as possible around that oval table, but we also have little things like I've done here, which is putting in a little extra spot for us to put our shoes on in the morning. My girls are always sitting here with the dog doing math homework. And so that really gives us another place to sort of rest as we're in this kitchen. This is a structural beam. One of the things that I loved about this home was the old sort of character of all of these natural elements. What I didn't love was the color of the wood that I inherited, which was quite browny red is how I would describe it. Not terribly pretty in my opinion. And so I spent, I don't know, maybe 47 hours lime waxing this probably 200 plus year old structural beam, because I will tell you that 200 plus year old wood is very thirsty, and that was a lot of lime wax. One of the things about this kitchen, again, that is a little different than almost any other room of my home is that there were actual overhead lights as a result of them having dropped this ceiling at some point in history. So this is one of the few places I got to pick some lights, and what I chose are these incredible Hadley pendants from Christopher Spitzmiller, who is just such an incredibly talented friend, and they're such beautiful light fixtures. I love them, and I particularly love how warm the light is from them because they have this gold foil inside, and so it makes this really warm thing as opposed to feeling cold or clinical in any other way. The other thing I would say is probably of note in this kitchen is that I do really love a good houseplant. Some of them are newer and some of them have been with us for quite some time. I love a topiary collection, which is always, in my opinion, a very chic and elegant way to have herbs just sort of at the ready. Some of these are edible and some are not. Please take note that I'm not suggesting you eat them. And then others have been with us for quite some time. For instance, this is what we like to call the big green people eater. And I put this in 12 years ago, and it has grown so much and so fast that it gets probably a quarterly haircut, because otherwise you really can't make toast here in the morning. Under the subject of having done much of this house by myself, what I wanted to do when I moved in here 15 years ago was to find antiqued Mercury backsplash. That did not exist when I conceptualized it. And so I bought sheet mirror and used a dissolving technique on the back of it and created my own backsplash and then installed it myself. And I will say I'm so happy with how it looks. It was a wonderful experience, but I'm also thrilled that Ann Saxon Waterworks now do it for us. I like to collect a lot of things. One of the things I love to collect is china. So I have a massive collection, and because I have really limited storage in the kitchen, I actually swap them out on a seasonal basis. So in the kitchen at any given time is that season's china and when we might use it. So for instance, one thing we really love and use quite a bit here in the spring is this beautiful Janori green with this very deep blue. And we love that. And we will often use that with something like this for a little breakfast setting. So why don't you guys follow me upstairs and we can take a look at some of the bedrooms. And here we are in the primary bedroom. So the primary bedroom is a good example of knowing yourself and knowing that to which you gravitate. For me personally, it felt like the right thing for this room is for it to feel really enveloping. So this is a wallpaper, actually it's a fabric from Benison, which I had paper backed. I fell in love with it. Again, sort of both the movement of the floral and also a really interesting mix of colors is the reason why I gravitated toward it. It has some purple, it has some pale blue, it has pink, it has red, and then it has this really grounding natural color. And so all of those are sort of why I wanted this to feel like it was completely covered. It's not a huge room, and some people probably wouldn't have done that which I did, which is to do a canopied bed. But to me, this was sort of the point for it to feel like it was wrapping its arms around you. This bed is a bed that has traveled with me in almost every iteration of my life. It's an antique French bed, which I bought at auction 18 years ago, and my mother actually helped me decoratively paint it in this amazing Swedish blue-gray. It started out its life as yellow, and it's one of my most favorite things, both for the memory and the sentiment, but also because I think it's really beautiful. The bed itself is covered in this great stark fabric. I chose to run this fabric the opposite direction that it would normally run because I wanted it to have interest horizontally as opposed to vertically. Again, I do love a good oil painting, so it was important to me that a lot of my collection find a home, and they have done that here in the primary. So I love hanging something like a piece of art on top of a soft fabric, like either a curtain or in an interesting way, like on top of a bookcase. Another aspect of this canopy bed, which makes me happy every single night and every single morning, is the detail work that I designed for underneath the canopy, which is something that you see only when you're in bed. Because this home is so historic, we have fireplaces in 4 of our major rooms, the primary suite being one of them. This particular fireplace doesn't work, which means that it gets to just hold my collection of vintage oil paintings. This one is one of my very most favorites. We call her my spirit animal. She is definitely a character. And I love her, and I love sort of the layer of interesting things that we have here. When it is not a terribly dark day, this room gets a ton of light. And so as a result of that, it was easy for us to conceptualize of doing things that were a little bit lighter and brighter in here. One of the things that I love when you have a room that has a more formal aspect, like having, 8 sets of silk lampshades, is to do something unexpected like a jute floor covering. In this instance, it gives us both tonal variation, which is very forgiving for a house full of children and dogs, but it also gives us texture and interest, and believe it or not, it's incredibly soft underfoot, and so it's a terrific selection for a primary suite because you're most often barefoot. One of the other things that I would say about this room is that I love this chair. It has been suggested to me that perhaps at some point I might need to recover it. This is a gorgeous silk cotton velvet, which is just like the most special. And as you can see, it has been loved and loved and loved. But I think the fact that it doesn't appear new is one of the things that I love most about it. So one other thing that I love in this room, because I do believe that the primary is probably the place for all things sentimental, is this incredible piece of artwork, which is a charcoal sketch, which was done by my grandfather, Stanford Horn, who was a very talented artist. So here we are in my eldest daughter's room. This room came about because about 4.5 years ago, she told me that she wanted tigers on her walls. And she is just old enough at that point to have found Google and was showing me all sorts of tiger decals and things that she had in mind. And so I said, I think that we can accomplish that, but in a way that will make both of us happy. And the solution to that is this wallpaper, which I really love, from Pierre Frey. And one of the things I like most about it is that it's very unexpected for a little girl's room. My daughter has a very strong personality in the best way possible. And so having black in this room made a ton of sense as it relates to her personality. I like the fact that it doesn't feel precious. I love the fact that it's a hand-blocked batik. And because it's printed on this really lovely linen paper, it also has texture and interest. These beds are actually the beds that have served now at least 2 generations of dreaming girls in my family. They were mine when I was young and I grew up with them, and I love them so much that at a young age I asked my parents to save them for me so that my children could have them, and lucky me, they did. We covered them in a fabric from Schumacher, which is a really interesting, it's almost a matelassé. It's got both texture, but then it also brings in this sort of really interesting smoky black and a little bit of chocolate brown. This is a great Fermois fabric. So we had these canopies made and they sort of bring that corally red color out, which I love so much. And they give a little bit of interest and they draw the eye up in this room because we don't have terribly high ceilings. One of the other things that was important in this room is that we had both form and function. So in this space, because it's an old home, we don't have a ton of closets. And so we needed something that would serve her sort of growing storage needs, but also could function as a place where she could curl up and read a book. So having a custom window seat made that would house not only toys for when she was younger, but books that now she's older, where she can curl up and do math problems, was really important. Similar to that, instead of doing a very traditional dresser setup, we wanted to use the height all the way up in this room for storage purposes. So not only does she have a desk set up here and some storage for clothing underneath, but she also gets to display my vintage collection of Nancy Drew. So this is one of the connecting spaces in our home. And I would say one of the things about connecting spaces that is often the case is they are overlooked. In our case, we couldn't overlook it because you can see it from the front hall. And so what started out as a camouflage movement, which is that we had this sort of old school beadboard here in these walls, and I couldn't figure out what to do with it. So the first thing I did is I decoratively painted it in this chocolate brown and cream stripe. But then I was left with a very unusual problem, which is that our ceiling felt boring. So what I ended up doing is creating this really cool trompe-l'oeil where from the bottom stairs, walking all the way up, and when you're in the room, it feels like this is tented. And we took that a step further, of course, because I can't help myself. It's an occupational hazard. And we tinted all of our light fixtures in an opposing stripe, covered this adorable piece of furniture, which gets about as much use as anything in my home, in this wonderful quadrille, and used these incredible old French Art Deco sconces. Last but not least, I framed all of these myself and did the matting for them myself with an X-Acto knife when I was probably 29 years old. So Lord knows they had to find somewhere to go in the house. So of all the rooms in this old house that needed our love and attention the most, this is probably the one that was the scariest. When I first looked at this home, it had fake wood beams all the way across the ceiling. There wasn't a single straight line in sight, and somebody had been using it for amateur taxidermy, so there was also quite a lot of stuffed animals in the room, and by stuffed I don't mean the good kind. And so the idea of conceptualizing this as a nursery and now bedroom for my youngest child took a little bit more imagination than some of the other rooms. I started with this incredible David Hicks wallpaper, which again is that saffron yellow, which I love so much. I think I've mentioned that once or twice, but I didn't want it to feel too sweet. So I mixed that with some darker pieces of furniture, some chinoiserie, and some things that sort of gave it grounding and depth because I didn't want it to feel overly saccharine. Then we had to tackle the floor plan. There are a lot of windows and a lot of doors in this room, and therefore not a lot of wall space. So one of the elements of this room that makes it so functional for the way that we live is this built-in, which I designed. So not only do we have the storage on either side for her books and stuffed animals and all of those things, but then in between that, we're able to accommodate another set of drawers underneath the bed, and then this very functional, super comfortable from firsthand experience bed, which functions as sort of both a day bed and then also, you know, just sort of a place to hang out in this room. One of the other things about this space that's very unusual is that we chose to treat the ceiling as the fifth wall. So when I first papered this, we only went up to this point. And it felt like something was missing. And so we had to take the whole thing down again and start over with the paper and include the ceiling in it. Because without that, you lose this sort of wonderful warm feeling of being inside this cocoon, which to me is an important design aspect of the space. One of the things about this space that I love so much is the ability to use textiles that I really gravitate towards. And as it happens, this also happens to be something that my daughter loves so much. This is a sewn Britain, incredible fabric that we adore that is covering this really, really sweet, perfectly scaled chair for this bedroom. And I just think the whole thing just feels both accidental and intentional, which to me is maybe the best kind of design. I always use the word home instead of the word house because to me, a home is the backdrop for the memories that you create and the backdrop for the life that you live. A house is a structure. And to me, the ability to live in a home is what really matters.
Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Georgia Howe. Welcome to my home in LA. Come on in.
Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. Scan the QR code to subscribe to our new channel, Wedding Worthy, where we celebrate amazing couples and the love stories behind their perfect day.
Hi, I'm Georgia Howe. I'm an interior designer, and we are at my home in Los Angeles. We wound up in this home mainly because we fell in love with this neighborhood. It's a neighborhood in Los Angeles called Hancock Park, and it's a historic preservation zone, and that's really what drew us here. We're both from the East Coast, and it reminded us a little bit of places we grew up. We've been here about 10 years, and nobody wanted the house, and we walked through it and saw a lot of potential and fell in love with it. When we bought the house, there all the original details were still here, and that's one of the things that really drew us to it. The kitchen needed to be redone. There was some deferred maintenance that we needed to take care of and some bathrooms. But otherwise, things were pretty cosmetic. So we renovated the kitchen and the primary bath, and a few years later, we did the kids' bathroom and a third bathroom. But everything else, the floors are original, the molding, all the windows, and other than paint and stain the floors, we kept it as is. Here we are in the entry. It's not a huge space, and as you can see, you see up the stairs. So I wanted to be able to have that moment where it feels, you're sort of welcomed into the house, but it was a little tricky with the stairs. So I had this vintage console from my first apartment in LA, and we placed it here. And then I found this mirror out actually in Sag Harbor probably 10 years ago. And that's sort of all I did. I often have a big thing of flowers. Usually I like to have some height. And then really it's about some of the art things we've collected over the years. There's actually, the flowers are hiding it, but my partner Leah Lebrere, who I have a wallpaper line with, I have one of her paintings there. And then I have a drawing that was in my room growing up, just a vintage pencil drawing. And then down here, I have a Marion McAvoy pressed flower that she does that I bought from KRB in New York, which is one of my favorite shops. This bench is a vintage bench I bought from Nikki Kehoe when we moved into the space, or when we moved into the house. And then this runner I put down, I probably bought it a year or two after we moved in from a shop out here. And it's taken me about 10 years of living here. I finally just ordered a stair runner, but that's not in yet because, as we know, things have a long lead time. I almost always have a candle burning in here and in the kitchen. I usually diptyque. This one is a new scent. I actually don't know how you pronounce it, but usually I have cypress, but I changed it up and I really like it. The chandelier is light we bought when we first moved in from a store here in LA. All of detail that you see, the stairs, the molding, the arches, all of that is original to the house. We didn't touch this space other than to paint it. And that's true for most of the house. I'll point out things that have changed, but mostly it's pretty, it's intact from 1921 when it was built. And as you can see, we have a lot of art. These are some photographs that actually belong to my husband, bought before we were married, and I love them. We have a Henry Cartier-Bresson, a Nan Golden, and an Elliott Erwitt. And I like that they're just kind of, it doesn't feel too precious there on the stairs. It's sort of a weird space that needed art. And that's what we put there, and we haven't changed it. This is a small piece my husband and I bought together a few years ago by a Japanese artist that we'd seen at Frieze, and we just loved it. So now let's take you into the living room. Here we are in the living room. As you can see, there's lots of sort of small vignettes. This is a Biedermeier dresser that was actually in my dad's house, and when we moved out here, he was moving, and so he gave it to us. These are a pair of lamps. I've had them forever. I bought them for our first apartment when my husband and I lived in New York at a vintage store in Soho. And this is Warhol pencil drawing that from his early when he worked in advertising. And a couple of family pictures, and as I said, I just sort of can't not buy accessories and things that speak to me. Over on this side, I actually just redid the art here. I had a series of small pieces, and I bought this at the Mika Erdogan Christie's auction a couple of months ago. I worked for Mika in New York, and she passed away about a year ago and had a wonderful auction at Christie's with all of her art and accessories and furniture, and it was really kind of fun and special to see her collection. This table was actually my desk in our first apartment when we moved to LA. I bought these lucite bases at a store in Florida and had the top made out of a stone that I thought was pretty. Some books. This was a crazy Ken candelabra. I think my mom gave it to me for Christmas one year. This is an old Knoll chair that I've just had forever. I honestly can't even remember where it came from. I think it was a desk chair in our apartment in New York. This little chair I bought at an estate sale out here. I liked the shape of it. I always had a plan to recover the seat and just haven't gotten around to it. Then these sofas were actually just a restoration hardware sofa in a white linen that I bought when we moved in here because we needed a place to sit, and it was a much bigger house than where we were coming from. And then I recovered them in this really pretty kind of soft yellow, butter yellow Loro Piano velvet. The coffee table I bought for our first apartment in LA. It was designed by Charles Hollis Jones. It's a lucite coffee table, and it's just sort of worked at the few places we lived before here, and now it works in this house. Those are little stools. They're actually Japanese rice boxes, and you can take the lid off, and we end up just sort of dumping stuff in them. I think there's some board games and stuff that belong to my kids. My mom and I bought them in New York at a sale. There was something many, many years ago called Seventh on Sale, and it was to raise money, I think, for AIDS research. And they sold clothes and furniture, and she bought them there probably 30 years ago, and somehow I wound up with them. The chairs are vintage Danish set of chairs that I bought on first dibs. They were sort of the first splurge for this house, and I still love them. The piece of art above the mantle is by an artist named Ethan Cook. My husband and I bought that a few years ago, and we love it. The photograph over the piano is by a friend of ours, was taken by a friend of ours. Her name's Mallory Martyr, and she's a really talented photographer. And we've had this forever. When my husband and I met about 18 years ago, we both had a few pieces of art. Not a ton, but a few things, and we both love art. My husband particularly likes photography, and it's not something you can build overnight. And honestly, not everything in here is super valuable. Some of it is, sure, and some of it is just stuff that we've liked that's charming that was a few $100s. And it wasn't until recently that we bought a few more significant pieces. We like buy things sometimes as our anniversary present to each other. We'll pick something together and kind of give it to ourselves. But it doesn't happen overnight. And so you have to be patient and try to learn, go to art fairs and discover sort of young up and coming artists and, support them. This is a table I bought in India about, 16, 17 years ago when I had a shop in New York and I was on a buying trip in India. And I just thought it was so beautiful with this sort of bone inlay, and I had two of them, but one got really damaged, so now I only have one. We use this space actually more than I think a lot of people use their living rooms because it's so central to the house. We entertain a lot, but even if we're not entertaining, my husband and I might come in and sit here. If the kids are watching a movie in the family room, we might sit in here and have in the evening have the doors open. It opens up to the outside, so it's really a nice room in the winter. You have a fire going. In the summer, you can have the doors open to the outside. So we end up using it actually quite a bit. Now I'm going to take you into the dining room. This room is one of my favorites, largely due to the paneling that was original to the house, and we actually recently redid it. It was, when we moved in, we painted it a sort of a brighter green and had a darker table, and I was just getting tired of it. So about a year ago, I repainted it this soft sage color and had this sort of taupey color on the ceiling. And I stained the dining table, but I didn't really love the way it turned out. So I had this tablecloth made out of one of my favorite Muriel Brandolini fabrics. And these chairs are a vintage set, probably from the 60s, that I bought on Cherish and recovered in a Claremont kind of like mustard boucle. The chandelier I bought at Luca. It's a shop out here, and I think they have a location in New York as well. I bought it, 7 or 8 years ago, and it's just perfect for the space. I love that the room has no recessed lighting. So it does get a little dark in here, but it's a perfect moody dining room for a dinner party. This dresser was the dresser in my bedroom growing up. I haven't stained it or done anything to it. Is it the perfect match? Maybe not, but I think it works and we like it, and it's full of my linen collection that I sort of hoard. The lights are from a shop out here called Gallery 7, and they cast a really pretty light in the evening. These were just these quirky like canvas palms that I bought at a shop in Florida, and they've just sort of lived in here. This is a painting by an artist named Michael Ray Charles that I've had for a while. I think works nicely in here. The bar cart actually belonged to my husband when we met, and we still love it. It's a little empty now because we recently built a bar, which I will take you into in a moment, but it lives here. We use it if we're entertaining and use it as a buffet. And this is a picture of Ernest Hemingway making a martini, so it felt appropriate. Over here are the curtains I redid when we redid this room. They're a sewn fabric that I'd seen in a different color in the sewn showroom in New York, and I fell in love with it. And the room was sort of built, the colors were kind of built off these curtains. These are a series of photos by a photographer named Dwayne Michaels. They're a little risque, and it actually was only recently that I think our kids fully noticed what was happening, but they're a really special series that we've had for a long time. There's no real reason that they're in here. It felt, when we were placing the art that we did have, we thought they worked nicely in here. A lot of it is, it's not a science, and so I just sort of go with what I think looks good in the moment, which is sort of freeing, because sometimes with clients and projects, you have to be a little more intentional and be able to explain why you're doing something. Because I do that all day for clients, I don't really want to do it for myself, so I just place things where I think they look nice. As you'll see throughout my house, most of the carpets are natural fibers. I love them because I think they go with everything. I think they're super chic. You're not committing to a crazy color or a pattern, and almost anything looks good with them. They're also a really nice price point, and so you're not going to pull your hair out if your dog destroys it like mine does, if you have to replace it in 7 or 8 years. One of the things we loved about the house was the way the living room flows into the dining room and then into the family room. We always say it's a great party house. We do a big holiday party every year, and all 3 of these rooms are full of friends and family and some kids, and it's really fun. My personal style, I always joke, it's every designer's sort of least favorite question. I came to the house with a lot of things. I love antiques and furniture and textiles and art and accessories, and so I had quite a bit when we moved in. Not all of it worked in the space, and so over the last 10 years we've really added to it. But it's really a reflection of mine and my husband's lives. We have, dressers and different side tables that were in our childhood homes growing up, and then there are things that we've bought and collected over the years together. I really just buy what I like and don't think too much about how it works with everything else. A lot of the pieces in here have a story and are things that have been picked up in travels and along the way. I try to be intentional about tying the rooms together. Of course, certain things I might fall in love with something that I've seen, while shopping for clients, and it just simply doesn't work in my house. So as much as I love it, sometimes you have to, pass things up. But I do really believe that if you buy what you love, it generally works. I spend a lot of time shopping for other people, for clients, sourcing. So for my own house, I'm maybe a little more free-spirited about it, and I get excited about something. And that doesn't mean I don't have regrets. There's certain things I've bought that are, probably didn't work and were a mistake and I've sold or gotten rid of. It's really, my house is a little bit of a hodgepodge, periods and styles, but that's what we like about it. I shop everywhere, a lot online, auction, shops in LA. I just got back from Paris, so the flea market's there. I love, my house is pretty much finished, and there's not a whole lot more space for furniture. So now I buy lots of accessories. We entertain a lot, so I buy lots of glassware and linens and things like that. Sort of scratches the itch, allows me to change things up a little bit. This is our family room where we, of course, spend a lot of time because it's the only TV on the first floor. So we watch a lot of movies in here. When we moved in, there were some sort of funky, weird bookcases. We redid those, painted the room this dark color. And then I fell in love with this fabric from De La Colonia, and we did the sofa out of that, and a linen kind of cozy TV watching chair and sort of a wine color. And as you can see, the room looks out to the swimming pool, although we never really open these doors. It's really more of a cozy evening room, but one of these days we'll think about replacing the doors and having it more indoor-outdoor, but not today. As you can see, we have a lot of books. Both my husband and I love to read, and we buy a lot of art books and design books and vintage. I have a large collection of vintage furniture and design books that I really like to reference for work, for projects when we're researching things. So it was important to have a lot of bookcases. So we put these in, and in the bookcases are sort of peppered with just photographs. This was a little drawing someone did for me of our first apartment in LA. You can actually see some of the artwork that you've seen throughout the house tour, and the coffee table is just, I thought was so charming. Little things my kids have made. I think that's one of my kids' handprints from when they were little. Some family photographs, photo albums, and as you can see, we're running out of space. We've got to find another place for bookcases because we're not Kindle people. We like actual books. So I don't know what we're gonna do when we run out of space, but we'll have to figure it out. The light fixture I bought in New York for our apartment there when my husband and I moved in together. We actually had two of them, and I don't know, we've lost the other one. There were two J boxes in the living room we had, and then this one has somehow survived several moves, and one of which was a cross-country move, and it lives in here. The desk is sort of a funky shape. It was actually built in when we moved into the house and just didn't have the energy to change it, but it's sort of a desk that sometimes my kids will use, sometimes my husband, if he works from home, will use it. And again, we added a couple more bookshelves. We have some old photographs of actually my parents when I was a baby, which I love. And yeah, we spent a lot of time in here because it's our family room, TV room, library, all of those things. Now I'll take you into the bar. So here we are in the bar. This is the most recent renovation to our house, and we think it's really a lot of fun. It was this empty room with these pretty windows and glass doors when we moved in, and it sort of became a catch-all and almost like a storage room. And we've been talking about making it up into a bar, and we finally did about a year ago. And we love it, and it's a lot of fun for entertaining. The footprint stayed the same, but we put in all the shelving and a wine fridge and the sink, and it opens to the outside, so it's really fun. In the summer, people come in here, we'll set up a bar for people to make drinks. And as I think I mentioned earlier, I'm a bit of a tabletop hoarder, so it became very precious extra storage for all my linens and glassware, and some of which you can see are out here displayed, and then there's more in here. I love these. I bought these when I was in Connecticut installing a project a few years ago. They have this sort of pretty woven, almost coaster built in. These I bought actually a big set of large and small when we finished this bar. I thought the kind of color looked really nice, and they're great for cocktails, they're water. And then these, I love beautiful sort of colored glassware. These were actually a present that someone gave me about a year ago, and I think they're so pretty. They look great on a table. And it's been a lot of friends know how much I love tabletop and entertaining. So once we finished the bar, people very generously, if they came for dinner or birthday, gave me some glasses or some linens. And so I keep kind of expanding my collection. I just got back from Venice, and I bought some really pretty cocktail napkins. These are fun. I love these. These I've had forever. They have this little woven leaf on them. And it's, another excuse and justifies buying tabletop. These are little matches that were left over from our wedding that I have in a dish over there, candles. These are pretty. Someone gave me these little toothpicks with pearls on them that feel important. The counter, I wanted something really durable. A lot of people, I think the instinct is to make a bar kind of glam, which my house is not necessarily glam, so it felt like it needed to really work with the rest of the house. So you can see I have these kind of cobblestone floors. The bar counter is just it's a soapstone. I wanted something durable that was gonna kind of just blend in with everything. And then we did a little brass bar sink with a brass faucet from Waterworks. It has a little wood detail that I thought was pretty. I've loved these woven blinds forever, so we did the woven blinds throughout. These counter stools are actually just an inexpensive catalog counter stool, and I covered them in a Luminoc fabric that I think is really beautiful and I've loved for a long time and hadn't had a spot for it. This light fixture is from a shop in London, Beata Human, who has a really pretty line of lighting and furniture, and I always thought it was quite charming. This was this little drawing I've had forever. I think it was somewhere in my house, childhood home. It's nothing valuable or special, but I just thought it was really charming and it fit perfectly between these doors. The floor is like a cobblestone from a shop out here called Exquisite Surfaces. The paint colors throughout the house are all different, but they're all there's sort of a warmth to them all, even though they're kind of in the gray family. Nothing's super bright or bold. I generally use Farrow and Ball colors. I just think they have such a beautiful range of kind of moody colors. This color is called Mouse's Back, I think, and I just loved it. It was sort of a brown, green, kind of like, honestly, sort of an ugly color, but I think it's really beautiful. I love to entertain. We entertain a lot, whether it's, a dinner party or a few families over. Yes, always have lots of food, lots of cocktails, and I think it's fun to set up and have the house looking really pretty, whether it's setting your table with, the plates that you love that you don't always use or the linens. People seem to really appreciate it, and I think it's really fun. I'm an interior designer, and it's sort of the only thing I've ever done aside from a brief stint at an art gallery in New York when I first got out of school. I was fortunate enough to work for a number of designers in New York before starting my own business. And the first thing I did when I started my own business was I opened a home accessory store in New York in Soho. And through that, I got clients and built my design business. And then my husband and I relocated to Los Angeles about 14 years ago and have slowly built my business out here. And now we have my design business is based in Los Angeles, but I work in New York and Florida and really all over the country. My advice to people that want to start a career in interior design is go work for someone. Work for someone you respect and whose style you like, and then maybe work for someone who you're not so stylistically aligned. It's important to work that muscle because not every client is gonna agree with you. Hopefully most of them do, and that's why they've hired you, but work for a few people before starting your own business. There's a lot you can learn, whether it's just, the business side of things, sourcing, don't underestimate what you can learn working for someone else. And as far as building a collection of antiques, there are so many resources now online. Live Auctioneers is a great resource. Try to zero in on what styles you like. Notice, look at who made things. If there was, I'm really gravitating towards Italian 1940s furniture. Look at the designers on those. Even if it's something you can't afford, maybe you can find something in the style. And it's, I really encourage buying vintage. I like to walk into a room and not know where everything's from. We live in a world where it's very easy to learn where people bought their, furniture and accessories and all. It feels, special and it's your own and nobody else is gonna have it. Now I'll take you into the kitchen. Kitchen was one of the first places we touched when we bought the house. It really needed to be updated and it was sort of broken up. There was a washer dryer kind of in the middle and a cabinet and a separate room for the breakfast table. So we opened it up and changed all the appliances. Again, it's pretty central to the house. You can see you open into the dining room on either side of the refrigerator. And we love to cook and, as I said, entertain. So this is another space we spend a lot of time. I wanted it pretty neutral because you see it from the entry, you see it from the dining room. I didn't want to make a statement with color. I wanted something that felt almost sort of utilitarian while still being pretty. We did just a simple gray marble countertop that's honed. These floors are a black and white marble from Exquisite Surfaces, a showroom I love out here. There's a big window that looks out to the swimming pool, which is nice. You can see the kids out there. And again, I did these glass front cabinets because I have all this pretty glassware in China and I think it's nice to show it off. We did wooden cabinets on the other side to hide all the ugly stuff. The lights are actually really old restoration hardware. I liked them because they just were sort of simple, but they felt a little bit vintagey. The pottery in the window, I actually bought about 6 months ago. It was a little birthday present to myself. I bought it from Nikki Kehoe out here. It's a potter that I just thought was really pretty with the handles, and would like to add a few more pieces to that collection over time. The counter stools, one of the things that are actually on my list to replace. I've had them, I think, from our apartment before we moved in here now 10 years ago, but they work and my kids beat them up and they kind of just disappear. So this is a little breakfast nook that was actually a separate room when we bought the house, and we opened it up so it was connected to the kitchen. I don't like tons of family pictures all over the place, but I thought it would be kind of fun for the kids to have one area where you see all, it's kind of our life, and it's fun. They come, their friends come over and they point out, that was me when I was a baby. And I remember going to friends' houses growing up and they had stuff like this, and I always sort of thought it was very charming. So we did it here. We built the banquette. It's in a kind of camel colored leather that is so durable, and just, it's not intended to be durable. It's not indoor outdoor, but it just gets beat up and it looks better as it's gotten beat up. The table I made, actually the base is vintage. I bought that on First Dibs when we were designing the house. And then I had just a stone top made that kind of is similar to the white stone in the floors. The chairs are a pair of vintage chairs that I bought a few years ago from a store here in LA because we needed two just simple chairs. They're a little bit squeaky, but they work and sort of disappear. And we do lots of, this is if the four of us are eating dinner. We'll usually sit here if it's not nice enough to sit outside. Now I'll take you into the powder room. Here we are in the powder room. It's very tiny. I think it was a coat closet back in the day, and someone, not us, turned it into a powder room. But we put this wallpaper in. I thought it was a little bit of a pop of color and pattern. This is a little mirror I bought at Nikki Kehoe when we were doing the powder room. This is this old stone sink from a place here in LA called Charles Jacobson. I bought these actually on a recent trip to London. These John Cocteau drawings that I thought were really charming. I gave them to my husband for Christmas. And then this is a watercolor of an asparagus that we thought was funny to have in the powder room. My husband bought it actually from a friend of ours who's a landscape designer who also does these watercolors. And we bought that a couple of years ago. I always think powder rooms are a place you can have a little fun and can be sort of separate and apart from the rest of the house. You don't want it to be stylistically totally disconnected, but I think you can, if your house is fairly muted, maybe it's a place you have a little bit of color, or it's a great place for wallpaper. So it's, especially when it's really tiny, I think it's nice to have a little fun. The thing I love most about our home is, I think it's very pretty, and I love the style of it. It really is. It's kind of what I always gravitate to, classic old houses. But we built our life here, and we have so many memories here. We have 2 kids. Our son, who's 9, wasn't born. I was pregnant with him when we moved in. Just the time we've spent here as a family with friends. We were here during the pandemic. It felt like a real oasis for us when the world was shut down. So the memories. Now I'll take you upstairs. These are portraits of my kids that were done by an English artist named Alexander Newley, and he did them from photographs, and I just think they're so special and really capture them, as they were both about 3 when they were done, and I just love them. These are a set of just pressed flowers that I bought in a shop in New York called Creel and Gow, and I always think things like botanicals are nice to fill for hallways. The light fixture is Urban Electric, which is one of my favorite lighting companies. We work with them a lot for clients, and I just thought it was charming and really just sort of pretty and soft. These are that my kids did, honestly, years ago now. They're 12 and 9, so these are probably when they were like 3, and it was kind of a hard wall to find something for, so I just put them up there. And so you can see there's a big blank wall there that one of these days I'll find something. I haven't quite found the right thing for it yet. And here we are in the playroom. This is a wallpaper from my line called Briar and Bird that is available in LA and New York and Texas, and it's the blue and white version of the artichoke artichoke pattern. I liked it because it was kind of large scale, and this room kind of doubles as a guest room. So it felt nice. It felt whimsical for a playroom, and really, I think, a nice, soft landing pad for guests. And now I'll take you into the primary bedroom. Here we are in the primary bedroom. I love it because I feel like we're sort of up in the trees. We're on the second floor, and there's 4 windows, so it gets really nice light. The walls are covered in a paper. They're these tiles the company's called Coppa paper, and they're these sort of almost like parchment pieces of paper in a tile pattern, which I love. The headboard, or the bed I made, it's a Carolina Irving fabric with a trimmed in a kind of caramel colored linen. The nightstands I actually bought when I had a shop in New York, and they didn't sell, and now they're my nightstands. Again, one of the things that I talk about replacing but have yet to. The light is a design within reach, a more modern fixture than you see in the rest of the house, but there's no recessed lighting, and I needed something that gave off pretty good light in here so that we can see. The beds, this is a quilt. It's kind of, now it's pretty worn, but I've had it forever. It's a company called Les Indiennes, and it was a really pretty block print, but it's probably need to get a new one. These are vintage pillows that I found at Nikki Kehoe. Really simple restoration hardware bedding. I like just kind of plain white bedding, no matter what the room looks like. The lights are just a simple sort of task light from Visual Comfort. Nothing fancy, but they do the trick. The rug is an old Moroccan rug, just a wool kind of ivory colored, and the bench is a vintage bench that I put a Claremont fabric on that I love, that now our dog has destroyed because that's where he sleeps every night. The window treatments are just a really simple ivory linen that I thought had a very nice weight to it, and the trim is actually the same linen color that you see on the trim of the bed. So it's really just sort of these creams and camels, and I wanted something that felt very sort of neutral, but not particularly feminine or masculine, and I tend to gravitate to kind of browns and creams, and so we love it. So this was one of our bigger projects. About 3 or 4 years ago, we opened up the entire outdoor space. It was very sort of choppy, and there was no real lawn for our kids to play on, so we enclosed it and have this patio where we built in a barbecue. And being that it's California, you spend a lot of time outside. We often entertain outside most of the year. So, and it opens up, our kitchen, and the kitchen and the bar open up to the dining area here. And then we have a little small seating area. It's a kind of a funny lot in that our backyard is actually our front yard. So we put in these tall hedges so we weren't right on the sidewalk. And often when I'm sitting out here, I forget that I'm right in the middle of the city. And really on the sidewalk, I could throw a tennis ball to someone walking down the sidewalk. But we built in this barbecue and put in a pizza oven, which is kind of fun for when we have people over. And we spend a lot of time out here. We love it. Home to me is our life that we've built here, our family, our friends. We travel a lot and we love to get out of LA, but I'm always so happy to come back here. I think every single trip we've taken, no matter how much fun we've had or how great it's been, we get home and we go, oh God, I'm so happy to be home.
Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Vanessa DeLeon, and welcome to my Edgewater, New Jersey townhouse. Come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. Scan the QR code to subscribe to our new channel, Weddingworthy, where we celebrate amazing couples and the love stories behind their perfect day.
Hi, I'm interior designer Vanessa DeLeon, based out of New York City, and we're currently in my Edgewater home. My husband and I were in the midst of designing what we thought back then was our dream home. And he loves modern, I love French Parisian, and how are we going to meld those two design styles together? So I started sketching, and the idea was I would make the structure on the right side of the house modern, and the left side of the house this sort of French Parisian feel. I'm inspired by Paris, and I started to look in the streets of New York on the Upper East Side. I would see these buildings or these historical buildings, and then attached to it was this modern structure. And I thought, how can I meld that together in my own residence? So what I did was literally, the house that we live in is the French Parisian side, and then it actually insets in, and that part is my office. So the house is French meets modern, literally. So I think the juxtaposition is amazing, and you have to do it tastefully done. If not, it just looks like a mix mash of all different things. So it has to be so balanced and so intentional. I think the biggest challenge building this home with my husband was striking that delicate balance between not going too far left and not going too far right, and really striking that perfect chord. And when we were building this house, I rendered everything, so we kind of saw the vision before it was actually implemented. But when you actually start seeing it coming to life, it's a totally different story. So, you know, when I was showing my husband the molding details, for example, of how it was gonna work or work in concert with the marble fireplace that we ordered from Italy, those are the sort of things that you don't see when you're shopping in a catalog or online, right? When you start seeing these pieces come in and how they speak to each other, that's a totally different animal. So I think that process was interesting because, you know, when he saw these pieces, he's like, are we going too traditional? And I'm like, no, just relax. You're gonna see how everything sort of speaks to each other and how it all works in concert together. I love living in Edgewater. We call this the Gold Coast of New Jersey. My home overlooks New York City, from the George Washington Bridge all the way downtown. So I literally have the best view. Looking at Manhattan every day is an inspiration. This is my parlor. I love this space because this is ultimately where I hang out. This is the girl cave. There's actually a TV right inside this mirror. So when you turn it on, the TV comes through, and this is where I love to end my night. In most cases, this is the formal living room, but in a French sort of Parisian, you talk about the parlor. This is my parlor. This fireplace, I imported from Europe. I love the fact that this keystone here echoed the same as the crown molding. So it was important for me to sort of match that elevation. And then the detailing here matches the same rosette as a fireplace and the molding. So I always say it's the devil in the details. And those are the little things that I stare at 7 years later and I'm like, oh my God, it looks so good. Never gets old. Coffee table. This coffee table was designed by me. It has all different marble sizes in the bottom, thick acrylic, mixed metals, because I love mixed metals. And I love coffee table books. I think that the more stack, the more fun. I don't like it to be super simplistic. I like it to be sort of overly decorated. Even though I like less is more, but for the coffee table, it's all the things I love. So there's a couple books that I've been in, like interior design book, I've been in 2 of them. And I just love to have this all collected here so people can see what I'm into. This is one of my favorite side tables from iCult. It's marble and gold. I love this piece because it really reflects our design aesthetic. It's modern, it's cool, it's timeless. It's Marquina marble. These are the elements that speak to my coffee table. That is 2 different companies, but all works together. And the pillows that you see on the sofas and chairs are actually designed by me and available through Home by Vanessa de Leon. I wanted a really interesting elevation in this space with antique glass, and I developed this elevation with moldings and trim and scrolls and, you know, the sconces. And this elevation was important to me because I wanted it to feel very formal. But in a townhouse setting, it's always difficult to find the best placement for a powder room. So there was no way I was going to put the powder room with the door facing the parlor. So I said, how can I do this in a way that it's hidden? Well, voila. I did it right behind the bookcase. So I had this cavity from my stairs to the parlor, Then I said, hold on, I can actually pull this bathroom through here and still have the symmetry of the actual bookcase itself. So the depth is identical. And in that cavity for the stairs behind it, it was just a perfect little nook for the perfect little powder room. So the idea for here was to make something a little bit more whimsical, something that everybody would talk about as soon as they walk out. So I wanted to create this library theme. So I did a grown vault ceiling, wallpaper from like a bookcase, and it is a bookcase. And I had this custom sink fabricated, and it looks like an open book. So it's all concrete. And I, believe it or not, I found the book cabinets on a website. I cut them down and created this pedestal, so it's actually the vanity. And then the floor is a kicker. I took a bunch of novels and I actually laid it out, and they essentially sealed it like a kind of like a sealed garage, almost like a high-end decoupaging, if you will. So that's actually the floor. So when you're on the toilet, you could actually read. I love crystals, and I love healing crystals, and I'm all about that. And my husband and I were in Aspen, and we were walking around, and we found this geode store and saw this beautiful piece of agate. This is probably the biggest piece of agate I've ever seen. And it was on a stand on the floor, and we were like, wow, this is amazing. My husband was first, it actually first resonated with him before it did me. So we were actually building the house when we found it. Because it weighs so much, we actually had to enforce more steel that had to go to the downstairs and work its way up to support this niche and the weight of this. But having this in the front entrance is actually energetically amazing, because it brings in good energy and it releases bad energy, and it's just a beautiful piece to have when you first walk in. We also backlit this, so you see this at night. All these crystals glow from the agate. It's just a remarkable piece of stone, and it's an architectural piece, and it's also sculptural, and it's one of my favorite pieces of art throughout the house. Come on straight to the dining room. What I love about this dining room, it's centralized between the parlor and the kitchen, and a little family room in the back. This is where we host all our parties. We love to entertain, and how I do that, I actually add another table and spill out into the living room because of the open floor plan. It allows us to be flexible. What I love about this dining room also is that this dining room table is designed by yours truly. This is a trough in the center. You know, we always find it difficult to add a centerpiece in the middle of a dining room. So I created this trough that actually elevates and lights up. And you can take the actual acrylic piece out, and it's all crystals in the middle of this trough. So it creates a centerpiece that's really beautiful and romantic. But if you want to serve and have actual serving trays on it, you pull the trough down, you put the cover on it, and you can serve. So it's sort of versatile, it's a conversation piece, and it's one of my favorite pieces throughout the home. I don't like to have everything matchy-matchy, but I do like continuity and I do like symmetry. So I did 3 chairs on either side, 6 chairs of the same fabric, same base, and then the host chairs, I did something a little bit more traditional, but I wrapped them in this great Christian Lacroix fabric that's stunning. I love butterflies, and butterflies really resonate with me, and I wanted to see a little fun and a little splash, and I love the fact that it has this coppery undertone to some of the butterflies, which then lends itself to what's happening in the kitchen. So it's just the rhythm and the movement of fabrics and textures, and seeing that from a distance just makes me so excited. This piece is a champagne metalled credenza where I keep all, I don't even want to open it because we might bust out the seams. This is where I have a lot of my dishware. This is where I have a lot of our napkins, and we host events and parties, and that's all in here. I wanted something that was unique. This is from Bernhardt, one of my favorite pieces. Above, I love Domingo Zapata. This is one of his original pieces, and it's in my home. This is a great piece. It's a conversation piece for sure, especially here in the dining room. And who doesn't love Annie Leibowitz's photography? This is one of her pieces with the stand. You can scroll through here and just, I mean, all her work is fantastic. And the fact that I have rotating art here, one of my favorite pieces. How to design a dining room. Some people over-design, and to me, less is more, and that's why I don't really keep so much on my dining room table, mostly because of the trough. I really want you to see the crystals in the trough. But I feel like if you do flowers, you just gotta be careful because it could be underscaled for a 96-inch table, or if you have a 120-inch table, you can't just have a single vase. I say, do multiples, layers of vases. They could be empty, it just can be stylized really beautifully. It could have branches in it if you have a longer table. You could even have your own trough of flowers or roses on the dining room table, and on the credenza, things that just matter to you. In this case, you guys were coming over, so I got some flowers. I love books. To me, books are like art, and having a book stand is a place where somebody can actually scroll through. This was a gift. My husband loves cars and he collects cars, and this is a gift from one of his really good friends. So I really wanted to showcase that piece here and they especially come over a lot for dinner. So that was important for me to add there. Candles, diffusers, things of that nature. It doesn't have to be overly designed. It just has to be tastefully done. Now we're in my kitchen. I love my kitchen. My husband he owns restaurants, he's a chef. I love to cook, I'm creative. My son's getting into it, so this is really where we spend most of our time. I always say the kitchen is the heart and the arteries are the spaces around it. Dining room, living room, it sends to the other pieces. So this is the heart, it truly is. And the artery is the dining room, the family room, the parlor. Okay, so everybody always asks me, this is so cool, what is it? So the idea is, I wanted something that was offset, asymmetric in a very symmetric situation, right? So how was I gonna do that by creating this sort of geometry? The idea was that I would have a marble box that holds up this island. So that was like the sculpture piece to it. And it actually is called Galaxy. It has flecks of copper, and the color story here is black, copper, white, and cream. So it also is a place where my son can cook with us. He stands on here, he helps prep, cook, he's close, safe. And the other idea to this space was you come up the stairs from the garage and you have a very ergonomic way of putting your groceries right here versus right here where you're over 40 something inches high, you're at 20 something here, and it's very comfortable to kind of sort through and actually place all the groceries here. So it's just a really great place, and also it's a great place to sit and have conversation if you're talking to someone in the dining room, or you're turned over and talking to someone on the island, or if I'm cooking, my friends are hanging out over here. It's just a really good flex space and just something interesting to look at, especially this is the first piece in the sightline when you walk in. There's so many favorite pieces of my house, but one that I absolutely adore is this L'Arcono stove that we had custom made for us. The idea was to bring in the copper, stainless steel because I love mixed metals, and we were also able, because we custom made it, we were able to put our last names and the year that this was established and made when the home was built. So it's a really cool legacy piece or hand-me-down. Hopefully my son would say, I want that stove one day. Who knows? That's a random thing to want, but hey, these stoves are legendary, so why not, right? The True refrigerator, the year that the black and copper came out was the year I was building my home, so I was their brand ambassador, and I was so excited to have this statement piece in my kitchen, this vertical cool piece that's so robust and so kind of industrial looking, juxtaposed to this French Parisian. It's just, the refrigerator is so me that it was intentional for this space. So I love this one. This is the under cabinet beverage center, which this is really, it's my son's refrigerator, so that's where his stuff is placed. This is a 36-inch counter that drops to a 30-inch table. So this is where my son has his breakfast in the morning. This is where we have a casual snack or dinner. We don't want to make the table up. So I love this, love the drop down. Makes for a great presentation, especially when you're entertaining. You could have platters here to keep the island open, or vice versa. If we have children at our get-togethers, most of the time we do, we make a little kiddie table over here and the adults on the other side. So it's just really versatile. This is an automatic little nook at the end of the home that served as a little family area. So the idea here was, when my son was a baby, this is where he had his playpen set up. Now he's older, so we have all his toys hidden behind the sofa. And then today, because you're here, this is nice and clean, but typically it's filled with Legos, hence the Legos I just found underneath here. This is really the family room. My son watches his shows, his YouTube on here. This is a big screen TV because of the distance. It is a full width of the townhouse, so that's why we have the big TV. And because the kitchen was so prominent, it was important for me to continue this elevation to these oversized cabinets that flank the television. It also creates great storage for all my son's toys. And of course, our dogs are part of our home. One of my dogs is Dolce, the other one is Vita, so La Dolce Vita, the good life. So this is supposed to look like the outside of our home. There's storage back there and it's accessed through the butler's pantry. So this is their little home within our home. This is the family room area. This is really my son's area. We have his storage underneath the TV. We have this ottoman filled with toys. And then I intentionally brought the sofa up so he can actually have his toys back there as well. So it's all hidden when guests like you come over. Behind me is a great piece from C. Finley. The idea for this piece and why it resonated with us, it's a Greek god. And we thought, hey, this is my son's area. He's our Greek god. My husband's Greek and I'm Cuban, so we thought it was a great piece for us here. And also brings a splash of color into this area as well. Right outside the door is this patio with this pergola that overhangs. Everyone thinks that the furniture out there is indoor furniture, and they're like, how do you have that outside? But it's actually resin, and it's sprayed in a copper finish. Sunbrella material. It is all rated for the outdoors, including the chandelier. It's made out of plastic and it's covered so it protects all the wiring. It is such a conversation piece. Every time someone walks out there, they're thinking that it's part of the inside of the house, but it's outside elements. So they freak out about it all the time. The best thing by being an interior designer is that you put your mark on the world. So the fact that I do hospitality, commercial work, and obviously residential work because people live, breathe, eat in their home, I'm literally touching everyone, right? So when they're at a restaurant, sharing a moment, a birthday, an anniversary, they're sitting in this space that truly, it's like the Picasso to the canvas. I'm Picasso, and that space is my canvas. And I leave my mark in the world, and to me, that means so much. And there's something so grandiose about thinking that people are going to be in this space that I put my love in, and they're gonna enjoy those moments with their family, their holidays, etc. There's just something so great about that. The wallpaper behind me was a very specific selection. It's from a company from France called Latisse. It is beautiful, comes in many different colors. So the idea for this was I wanted something to run up the entire side wall. So this goes all the way from the bottom to the upstairs. And a fun fact, about a few months after we moved in, I'm sitting in the dining room and I'm looking at the wallpaper and I'm saying to myself, something's wrong with these panels. And I realized that my installer, who I love very much, installed it upside down. But then I was like, I can rip it all out, or do I just leave it and that's the story? So I opted to leave it and that's the story. So this wallpaper is actually upside down. Fun fact. Because the space was so narrow, I wanted to make sure that I had a window that overlooked the garage to make the downstairs feel much wider. But I wanted the garage to be special and be a part of the house and do something really interesting. So I designed this mural. So when you actually pull up to the garage, it looks like you're driving through Prince Street in New York City. And then I made this facade of all the window facades for that street. And I created one and photoshopped my husband's restaurant in one of them. You know, manifestation. My husband works out every single morning, so he ascends to the downstairs and always looks at his late mother before he walks into the gym. So this is a little space for her. He's always down here, so I thought to put it right here where he sees it every morning. Let's go into the second floor, which is my primary suite. Follow me. This is the second floor. We also have this big selfie mirror. I always, before I leave, make sure I look okay. And this is, I ascend to the downstairs, but this is where I look at myself one last time before I leave because it's an oversized mirror in this space. And this piece of art is one of my favorite pieces because it's me, and the artist who did this is Punk Me Tender. So Punk Me Tender did these NFTs around the pandemic, and he selected a few businesswomen, and he selected me to be one of his NFTs. So I'm like, can I have this printed? So he printed this one for me. So this is one of one, Punk Me Tender, this butterfly, which I love butterflies. So this gallery was nicely symmetrically installed, and every so often my son puts one of his pieces of art, which I love him to be expressive and creative. So in between we have some strange asymmetrical frames. This is me, apparently. Can you see the resemblance? Now we're gonna step into the primary suite. Follow me. So I love my primary suite. It feels romantic and elegant and tranquil all at the same time. Custom made this upholstery headboard that is beige to match the beige drapes and a lot of the gold elements. We have scalloped wallpaper from Philip Jeffries on my ceiling. It creates this twinkle effect. At night it looks stunning. In the daytime it looks great too, but at night it just creates this nice little glow on the ceiling. Feels very serene. We found these old Bombay chests, and what I did was just stylize them a little bit different, and I kind of repurposed them. I used the same marble in the bathroom area on top of these Bombay chests just to change them up and to feel more like they were custom made for the space. Now, I'm very much inspired by hotels. We travel quite a bit, and in Europe, I used to see these bathtubs in the middle of the spaces, and I said, how amazing would it be to have this bathtub in the middle of the primary suite overlooking Manhattan? And that's what I did here. So I created this platform to delineate what part of the floor is intended to be part of the ensuite, and then the chevron floor is the wood floor, so creating this little moment, this little stage, if you will. And when people walk in here, when I show them the house for the first time, they're like, is there a bathtub in your bedroom? I'm like, yes, there is. There's not one in yours. So this is one of my kind of notable pieces. Then we have the fireplace that echoes the same one as the parlor. Just loved it so much. Again, that tie-in with the moldings was super important. We have two chairs here. Fireplace is just very serene. Then my bathroom is right in the bedroom. Have a glass shower to overlook Manhattan. So you see beautiful Hudson River when you're getting ready in the morning. And our house faces east. And to see the sunrise in the morning and sun gaze is amazing. Over here we have my vanity, double vanity with a 45-degree angled trough sink, his and hers. Again, if you notice, the marble matches, the platform matches the oversized marble slabs in the shower. So the story is really cohesive, and it sets the tone and it matches all the other elements throughout the space. When people walk in, when I show the house for the first time, they're like, why is there a Louis XVI chair in your shower? And I said, well, it's a outdoor chair that's in my shower. So it's where I sit down with steam or shave my legs. And it's really an outdoor chair, so it's rated for all elements, hence the shower and steam. Welcome to our lounge on the roof. When you walk up the stairs, the first piece you see is this Timothy Alton infinity mirror. It's pretty wild because the bulbs look like they're just literally infinity. And except for your face stays one dimension, but the lights looks like it's a tunnel. Everybody freaks out about this. I wanted to change the floor up here and do something unique, so I did concrete sealed, and the intentions is to have like these cracks that concrete always cracks over time, but I wanted it to look like it was already cracked and filled with metallic. So there's gold and silver metallic paint within the epoxy, and then obviously some natural cracks over time. The cement does move and it has cracked, but it's supposed to look sort of like edgy and cool and loungy, and there you have it. Of course, a notable Mario Bellini sofa. I love this piece. You could add pieces to it, you could remove pieces, you could take the ottoman, put it in the center. It's such a cool loungy piece and such a notable one. Platinum chairs, because why not? It's the lounge, it's fun, it's modern, it's cool. And this fireplace is all the talk every time people are up here. It's really not a fire, it's just vape. And the idea is, if kids are up here, especially my son, my son used to take his whole fire department that he had with the firemen and the trucks, and he used to put it on here and go wee, wee, wee. It was very cute when he was little. But now it's all about Legos because he's 6. So there are some Lego pieces within this trough for sure. We have near Marquina marble on top. This fire is so cool because we leave that on. It just creates a vibe, and you hear the logs crackling. It's really cool. TV, the idea of the smoke. I did this wallpaper in this 3-dimensional wall profile with the LEDs behind it, so it looks like it's actually 3-dimensioned. And my husband loves to smoke cigars, so I made this little niche to make it look like this is part of the firewood. And down here is his humidor, which is where he stores all his cigars. So if you see like a smoky feeling, it just feels like a vibe. It feels like a lounge. I designed this bar with the mixed metals in mind. Silvers, golds, lacquered, and walnuts. So I designed this entire thing to create an effect of, this could be a piece of furniture, this could be a bar, but it could be very sculptural and very cool at the same time. Over here we have the true columns. This is a beautiful wine column. Again, this robust and industrial feel with the mixed metals using silver and gold to tell the story of this space was important for me. So that's why I did all the appliances as so. And this is where we entertain. This is where the parties happen. We have our ice machine down here, our beverage center in here. We have the indoor-outdoor, the walls open up, the window walls open up, and you can literally feel like you're outside in. But, you know, this is where the party happens. Everybody loves to be on the roof deck overlooking Manhattan, and this is the appropriate space. Yes, we use it as a family room, but mostly it is a lounge, and it is really our kind of bar hangout area. I wanted to do spackled in LED lights, and when I was building the house, they were all the rage back then. So the idea for that was, my husband and I, when we got married, our whole theme was X and V. His Greek name is Halalabas, and that's an X, and mine is Vanessa, V. And our wedding theme was XV, Roman numerals, and it also was on the 15th. So we did this thing that everything around our napkins, our beverage themes, or whatever, our wedding, everything was this XV. So I'm like, how cool would it be to actually install these LED lights in a grid so it looks like a geometric, cool design, but it actually is our initials, X and V. I love the upstairs lounge, and I love the fact that I have New York City right outside my view. Speaking of New York City, come follow me. This is our outdoor terrace on the roof deck. Because of this vertical living alongside the cliff, there wasn't much space to have a backyard. So in these sort of settings, in these townhouse settings, the backyard essentially are your roof decks. The roof deck here was important to have all the outdoor activities that you would have in the outside in a backyard in a traditional setting. So we have the pool on our deck that overlooks Manhattan. We have this outdoor barbecue that overlooks Manhattan. We dine al fresco. We have these dormers that our dogs actually pop into and they can actually see the street. We have a fireplace out here. It's so serene, so amazing, and why wouldn't you want to be in this rooftop lounge that overlooks Manhattan? And you have the George Washington Bridge all the way downtown to the Freedom Towers. It is such a remarkable place to be. And then when you look at the back of the house, you see coyotes and deer. Supposedly someone has seen a bear in this area. I have not, so I can't, well, I saw pictures of it, but I couldn't really see where it was, so I can't really tell you, but I know I've seen coyotes and I've seen deer outside our backyard. So now we're walking into my office side. This is my office side, so this is the modern side. And if you notice, we went from a mansard roof, which was more traditional, to this glass facade, which is modern and really edgy. So this is my office side, but it's all connected from the 4th floor patio. So I originally wanted to be a fashion stylist, and I went to FIT, acquired a great position at a big fashion house, and realized it shortly thereafter. It was like I was living The Devil Wears Prada, if you ever seen that movie. And I thought to myself, this is not where I want to be. I felt like it was a bit toxic, and I quickly left fashion and went back to my dad's furniture store. And I was actually working at my dad's furniture store, putting myself through college. So when I was there, I was designing and sketching and coming up with like new cool designs for furniture. And people would ask me, can you come to my house? I want to do window treatments and bedding, and you know, I want to paint the wall, I want to do some wallpaper, and it was things of decorating at that time. But then it was like, hey, I want to blow out the house to the back. I want to go up another floor. I didn't even know what a load-bearing wall was at the time. So I knew that I had to go back to school and really, you know, take interior design classes so I can know how to do AutoCAD, know what a load-bearing wall was. And I did, and when I went back to school, I felt a little bit behind the 8 ball because all my friends had graduated, and I thought I want to continue and start like my career path. So while I was in college, I opened up my LLC and started from nothing and developed this business that was Vanessa de Leon Associates. And here I am, 20 some odd years later. Welcome to my office. This is my portfolio wall. I like to change these up every once in a while. And my logo color is sage green, black, and white. So I always have a little element of the color of my logo somewhere in the office. So this is the portfolio wall. Why not have it there? So as soon as you walk in, you see all my past work, and we rotate that every once in a while. So it's a lot of fun to see different work. And when my clients are sitting here, they can see something that is stagnant versus something that's rolling on the screen, but typically we're doing a presentation when they're here anyway. So these are some of my awards. I have many others literally everywhere, but these are some of the newer ones. This is a kitchen and bath. In 2018, I was honored the Innovators, which is a very pristine award for the kitchen and bath. I was one of the designers that were picked for that. This is where I have most of my presentations. And because this still is a townhouse type of setting, we have a kitchen within this space. Instead of a hood, we have a downdraft that goes directly outside. So when we do have a little meal that we want to cook or heat up, we have this as an opportunity to have a kitchen within the space that the staff can use. This is what we call the design pit. We have a few designers that are out in the field right now. This is Rob, this is Talia, this is my desk, this is Christy's desk, that's Vicky's desk, and this is Tim's desk. And this is where the magic happens. And this here is a model of the new house that we're building, the true forever home. I wanted to model this as a gift to my husband because it was a lot to create, and I wanted him to see what everything was going to look like as far as the elements are concerned. And it's an unusual house. I designed this house with a center courtyard, and the idea is I believe very much in feng shui and in having a balanced home. So I actually designed this house with the Bagua in mind. So the idea is that this is a center courtyard that has the pool inside the courtyard. This is truly the heart and the center of the home, and everything kind of spills around that. So the house is very unusual, made with love, and here you have a 3D model of it. I don't really believe that there's work-life balance, at least for me. Building my office right next to my home, I could come down at 1 o'clock in the morning and get this creative rush and work and be here and be filled with samples. knee deep in samples, and I could do it at any time of the day. But it works for me because as soon as I put my son down, I do come and I do work because I work best at night. My creative juices just flow in the middle of the night. There's no one here, so I'm able to really just be in my own element and just think and design. Because most of the day I'm running around, going to job sites, answering questions, answering emails, working with the staff. I'm really not being creative or designing during the day. So the time that I have is really in the middle of the night. And that's where I work. And it's so convenient because I can literally open up a door and hop to my office. I think what home means to me is peace. Obviously, a well-designed home means peace to me. And the fact that my home reflects my personality, there's a sense of peace. And when I'm here, I feel peace. I feel a Zen moment in every room that I sit in. So yeah, I think it means peace for me.
Hey Homeworthy, I'm Lauren. Welcome to my home in Scottsdale, Arizona. Come on in and I'll show you around.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
My name is Lauren Lerner. I'm the owner of Living with Lolo Interior Design, and you're at my home in Scottsdale, Arizona. I have lived in this home for about 2.5 years. I built this house as a place for myself and my family, but also a place where I can office out of for my interior design business. So we have a separate structure on property that serves as our office space. I wanted to really capture that indoor-outdoor feel, which is so essential here in Arizona. So I wanted to bring the outdoors in and vice versa, and really just make the entire home feel peaceful and also energizing at the same time. Let me show you my living room. I found these chairs and fell in love with them. I actually designed this whole space to use these chairs. I love that they're so sculptural and they look like a piece of artwork in the space. I really love to incorporate different materials into my own home. And so these tables are a great example. They're a mixture of marble as well as a metal base. And I love how they contrast with the wooden accents on these chairs. When designing a space, I like to make sure that things always look great, but they're also functional. So these vases actually act as a hidden space for our remote controls. So we always know where to find them, but they stay hidden as well. In this space, I love how comfortable the sectional is, but I also love that anything can be wiped off of it. So I don't have to worry about spilling wine. I actually just changed out my pillows because I am all about the chocolate browns right now, and I saw this pattern and I fell in love. I like that as you sit in this couch at night, this console table gives me a really great place to put my tea and actually be able to relax, watch the TV, and have a place to set my drink. I love this little bar area. When I entertain, I tend to change out the liquors that I have on display. So if I'm gonna be making a spicy margarita, which is my favorite cocktail to serve, I'll put up my favorite tequilas and put the vodkas or the gins away. I love to make infused salts, like an infused lime salt for my margaritas. I think it just makes it a little extra something when you're serving a drink to a guest that's in your house. Another tip is to use printed pieces of art on your bookshelves or your bar shelves. I actually just got these off of Etsy. I put them in frames, and it's a really great way to give your shelves extra height. And my biggest tip for keeping cactuses alive in your house is actually to have faux cactuses because I love to travel. I love my plants staying looking good, and I don't have a green thumb. So finding really great faux plants is a really great way to have greenery in your house, but make sure that it stays alive. The colors and the tones in my house are really warm and neutral. I love that I can keep everything really clean and a neutral color palette, like my wood floors, as well as this rug that is on top. It allows me to switch out things over time and not have to redo the space. So my pillows a couple weeks ago used to have a blue pattern in them. And I love that I'm able to make that change, but keep the more expensive items that you don't want to purchase over and over in a neutral color is a really good option. I love that this fireplace goes from the floor to the ceiling and uses a really seamless tile to give a bold, dramatic statement. I also chose to use a Samsung frame TV so that I could have a beautiful piece of art displayed instead of having just a black screen in my living room. As you can see, I don't have a lot of wall space. There's windows on both sides of the room, and this is a great opportunity to still be able to add art to my space and have a TV. I love this pattern on this drapery. These are actually stationary panels, so they're not made to open all the way, but they really just frame my big sliders and act almost like a picture frame would for a piece of art to my outdoor space. I don't have an issue with needing to close these because both of my outdoor living spaces have a patio over them, so it's never really an issue getting too much sun when I'm trying to watch TV. I'm gonna show you the lounge area. Come with me. You'll notice in this space that I've actually used the same rug and the same light fixture that I used in the living room space. That was on purpose because this is one large space. I wanted the rooms to feel connected, but I wanted each space to feel defined as well. These chairs were a find that I fell in love with. I love the unique structural shape of the chair, and I thought that they'd be a really fun accent to add to this space. When people come over and sit in these chairs, I always get the comment that they're so comfortable, and people are really surprised by that because looking at them, you would not assume that they feel that way. This is a cement coffee table. I love the scale of this within the room, and I love that this circular element adds a different shape than a lot of the square elements you see in the space with the windows, the sofa, etc. These are just a couple of funky vases that fill up this side table and allow you to still have a place to put a drink, but I just love how fun these pieces are. Let me show you this piece of art. I love that this has a lot of texture to it, but it is a simple piece of art in a taupe color. It allows me to keep that taupe theme, lots of textured and layered elements throughout my home. I would say that my personal style is definitely more modern. It's also very eclectic. So I gravitate towards pieces I love, and I tend to design the whole room around them. I had a completely different career for most of my time after college. I worked in the retail industry, managing stores regionally, and really just fell in love and found my passion for interior design. So 8 years ago, I started this business. I haven't gone to interior design school. I learned everything as I went along working with clients and designing my own home. So the style of my house is more modern. The main portion of my house is a big living room and kitchen space that opens up to the courtyard and the backyard. When you go this direction in my house, you have the master suite and my kids' hangout space in a guest room. And when you go this way in my house, you'll have a powder bathroom, a laundry room, and a workout space. All right, let's head to the kitchen. Welcome to my kitchen. I knew that I wanted to have large picture windows over my range, and I thought that this brass shelving was a really great solution to add interest, but also a lot of functionality. I have bowls that I keep lemons or onions in, so when I'm cooking, they're always accessible. I have plates and bowls that I utilize all the time in the kitchen, and containers that look like decor, but this is actually my favorite pasta, Banza pasta. My favorite feature in my entire kitchen is my pellet ice maker. So some of you might call it sonic ice, but this ice is truly the best, and this was a must-have in my kitchen. All of the cabinetry is actually in oak with a black stain, and I chose a quartz countertop because I love the stone-like appearance of it, but it's really easy to maintain. So I find that my family sits here more often than you'll find us sitting in the dining room when we eat on weeknights. This is just a really great place to gather. We have functional seating, and these chairs are also really easy to clean. So my kid can get some spaghetti sauce on them, and I don't have to run worrying that I need to clean it up really quickly. Then my light fixtures over the island give me the perfect amount of style and ambiance at the same time. When I cook, I like to try new recipes. I don't do a lot of the same recipes over and over because I like to try different ones. I tend to find my recipes on Instagram or Pinterest, but I like to keep them pretty simple. I like recipes that don't have a lot of steps, and I prefer things that use one pot only. I loved the texture of this vase, and it adds just the perfect centerpiece to my large island and the right scale. And these are, again, some branches and beautiful green leaves that add a pop of color to my otherwise neutral kitchen space. Welcome to the dining room. I really wanted this space to feel inviting, but also have a different personality than the rest of the main living space. So adding wallpaper to the ceiling was actually the perfect place to do that because I have this natural soffit right here. So adding the wallpaper allows this room to feel like its own amongst this bigger space. I like this really long dining table that allows me to sit 10 people. I loved this piece of furniture when I found it. I thought it just had such a cool, funky vibe with the handles. And I needed a piece of furniture to anchor this part of the room and to be functional as a buffet when I'm entertaining. But I also have things that I want to keep handy in my main living space that I don't want out in the open. So for example, I have a printer in here. This allows me to be able to print labels from Amazon when I have a return and I'm using my laptop without having to walk all the way to the office. So it's hidden, it's put away, and it's a great solution. I also adore this light fixture. I think this lightly smoked glass is such a cool accent that you don't see all the time. I chose a black fabric in here as the drapery panels. I love the dramatic look that it frames this space with. It also acts as, again, a really great frame to my outdoor space. You can see my grill, my garden. This is a pass-through space walking from the kitchen out to the grill and the garden area. These chairs are a velvet chair that just add a really cool element to the space. I love how comfortable they are. They all have armrests on them. And this rug is just such a beautiful color of blue that plays really nicely with that ceiling wallpaper. I would say that it's important when designing a space that you push yourself outside of your comfort zone a little bit. So it's always nice to challenge what might feel comfortable and safe to you and throw in a little bit of fun and personality. Those usually are our clients' favorite spaces. It's really important to me to design a house that was comfortable for entertaining, and I wanted to be able to have parties, and I wanted to be able to have my clients into my home so that they can feel firsthand what it's like to live in a luxury design space. Welcome to my master suite. In this area, I wanted it to be peaceful and relaxing, but I also wanted it to be a space that makes me feel rejuvenated when I come in. I added this beautiful blue wallpaper because to me, blue feels very tranquil and it just helps bring me peace at night when I retreat to my master bedroom. This headboard is a fabric that I fell in love with. I had this bed custom made so that the bed could be high so that I had the right scale for the room. This fabric is just such a fun abstract print that it was a place that I took a chance on in my bedroom to have a little fun, and I love how it turned out. So these nightstands I also had custom made so that they were wide enough for the space. With such a large bed, I wanted to make sure that the nightstands really filled the space well. It's actually an oak veneer and a shaw gray leather front. So the textures really just make the space feel really special and also high-end. This lamp is a really cool abstract find. I fell in love with it and just loved how the shape of this worked so nicely with the pattern of the bed. I chose to keep these Roman shades in a neutral fabric, but they add so much functionality in allowing me to have blackout shades drawn easily when I'm ready to sleep. I really love having touches of black throughout my spaces. You'll see it repeated in a lot of the decor objects, in the drapery rods, in the artwork that I choose, and having little bowls or vases, and in this case, this clay box is really great because you can store things that you need to have by your bedside at night, whether it's chapstick or a bag of tissues, and that way they're always by your side, but they're hidden away. I like to keep my bedding really simple and add in pops of interesting fabrics with the pillows. I also get really hot at night, so all of my bedding is a bamboo fabric so that it keeps me cool when I get a little bit hot. This is a wool rug that really anchors the space. The neutral color allows me to add the pops of color and the pattern and other elements of the room, and this rug just really grounds everything. I think that having more color in a smaller space like a bedroom versus a large space like a living room is a great place to play with color without having to commit to it in such a large space. In my master bedrooms, I really wanted to make sure that I had access with big sliders to my outdoor space. So my master does the same. It accomplishes the same goal as the other spaces in my house. I love that I can walk outside the master. I can sit in these lovely chairs, have a cup of coffee, put on my shoes, and have access to the outdoor space as well. I chose these two pieces of art for this wall because I loved the subtle abstract vibe that they give this space, and because I have smaller patterns on the wallpaper and the bed, I wanted to keep this a bit larger scale. Let me show you one of my favorite spaces in the house, the ensuite master bathroom. Welcome to my master bathroom. In this space, it was really important to me to feel like it is a spa. I wanted to have access to my outdoor spool, which is a large hot tub, and be able to also sit in my bathtub and enjoy the water feature, the fire feature outside. I love relaxing in my bathtub with a cup of tea and listening to some good music at the end of a long day. This painting is actually from one of my favorite artists. I love the abstract technique that she uses, but I also love the color and the vibrancy of the pieces that she does. This adds so much personality and color to my bathroom that is otherwise a pretty neutral space. This bench is also a really great place to be able to sit, put on your shoes, put on your cuticle oil, whatever you need to do in the mornings, and be able to get ready and go. So this is just a really fun handmade cement planter in the same blue color that you'll see in the artwork. And I've also repeated that in these drapery curtains. So this fabric has this really pretty subtle print as well, and it repeats that blue color. This is my makeup vanity. And I added this cement mirror because I just wanted to do something really different in this space. I saw this mirror, I loved how unique it was, and I flanked it with these beautiful gold pendants. These are the same black oak cabinets that I have in my kitchen. And this is a really comfortable little stool. It is a boucle fabric, and this is great that I can sit on, do a face mask, put on my makeup, and have my own little vanity area that is separate from where I take care of my skincare and have my sink. I knew that I wanted to have a marble floor in my master bathroom. I did a really seamless transition between the main wood floor and the marble flooring in my house, and it really just flows nicely into this space. I've carried that marble through to the shower area, but I also know that it's nice to have a soft rug under your feet, so this runner was added as a place that you can step when you get out of the bath, out of the shower, and have a warm place to stand. I love when I'm sitting in the bathtub relaxing at night and I look up at this beautiful chandelier. These are such stunning crystals that hang down, and when all of the other lights are off, this actually casts a really pretty glow on the ceiling, and it feels just like a really sacred, special place. The sink area matches the vanity area. We have the same cabinets, the lighting and mirrors for a consistent feel, but I love keeping the areas separate because you can't have too much space as a girl that loves beauty products and skincare. I have these beautiful leather baskets in these shelves, and this is really just a place where it's a catch-all for little bath salts or bath bombs, things that I want to have access to use in the tub, but I don't actually want them out and on display. My favorite part of my property is definitely being able to spend beautiful nights outside, have my doors open, and be able to feel like my inside and my outside is one big space. My personality injected into the design is what really gives my home soul. It makes my house feel like a home. It is a really well-designed space, but it's also very functional. And you'll see pops of personality and color and my own design style in every space. Let's head outside. I'm gonna show you my outdoor living spaces. right off of the primary bathroom is my spool. A spool is a large hot tub that's not quite a pool, but it's heated like a spa. I love that I have access to this right off of my primary bathroom. I have a fire feature. I can light at night as well as the water feature. Some people might think it's a little funny to have a hot tub here in Arizona, but we live in the desert and at nighttime it gets really cool. It's so great to be able to come outside, sit in the hot tub, and feel real nice. I decided to add this metal wall behind the spool. It is actually patinaed, and so it looks like it's a copper color now, but it actually adds a little bit of privacy and makes the space outside of the master suite feel a little bit more secluded and a little bit more intimate. This is my outdoor dining area. I love how there's a seamless flow from the inside outdoors. This large dining table is enough to sit 10 people, and I have these great pendant lights hanging above. So this really helps me have great ambiance in the space when it's dark outside without having my can lights turned on throughout the whole space. So when you walk in this place, I have this console that looks awesome, but it's also super functional. So I hide things like sunscreen and water guns in these baskets so that my kiddo has the stuff he needs to have fun outside, but again, things are tucked away and they look great. Indoor-outdoor living in Arizona is awesome about 7 months out of the year. The other months, it is really hot, and as you can imagine, we do tend to keep the sliders closed so that we can keep the house air conditioned. But when the weather is perfect, there is no better way than to live in a space where you can take advantage of the outdoors all the time. I chose limestone pavers for my flooring material outside. The reason I chose limestone is because it is cool to the touch. So if you're walking around barefoot in the summertime, your feet aren't going to burn like they would if you're on brick pavers or something else. On the table, I have these moss planters that have actually held up really well for the last 2.5 years, but they are faux moss, and again, just add a little bit of decor to the space and add a pop of color as well. These are outdoor rated dining chairs. They have a performance fabric on them so you can hose them down and keep everything looking really good. But it's really important here in Arizona that you use outdoor furniture that will actually last, because a lot of brands don't actually warranty their products in Arizona for outside. I love in my landscaping that we also have the juxtaposition between the cactus as well as the roses. It's a really fun play that you don't see often in landscaping. This is actually a limestone brick that we've used on the side of the house. We've applied a mortar wash over it to give it a really almost used and patina feel. And as you walk over here, these are some of my favorite cactuses. I love that they're actually blooming right now. It is springtime in the desert, and there is no better time to be here in Arizona. These lounge chairs were a perfect addition to the backyard. I love the curve and the modern shape of them, but they actually form and fit your body perfectly. So this is a great place to lay out and get a perfect suntan. This is one of my favorite little secret spaces of my house. You'll be so surprised about how much you can actually grow here in Arizona. I have zucchini and tomatoes, I have lettuce and a lemon tree. I'm actually growing a nectarine tree over here right now, and this is one of my favorite fruits. I'm so excited to see how many little nectarines I have growing right now. When you're trying to grow a garden in Arizona, it's really important to hire professionals to help you. People that are experts in their field are going to do wonders to help you be able to have a garden that flourishes. I love that these are herb gardens. I have my oregano, my thyme, my cilantro, my sage, everything that I need to come out and clip them when I'm cooking in the kitchen. This is my grill area. I splurged on this barbecue, and I love having special people in my family come over and grill for me at night. My front courtyard is the place that I spend the most of my time. I love having these beautiful sofas outside and these fun decorative pillows to sit and relax at night. I also love coming over here to the fire pit. This area has the most comfortable chairs that my dogs love snuggling up into. Being able to sit out here with friends and family with the fire and looking up at the sky is amazing. And then if you follow me over here, this is actually the entry to my entire house. I love this reflective water feature that guides you into the house and really helps set the tone for the entire home. I have the same type of landscaping in my front courtyard that I do the backyard, the juxtaposition between the cactus as well as the rose bushes. You'll see that the cactuses are strategically placed so they actually look like architecture as you're walking into my house. Home is a place that makes you feel comfortable. Home is a place that inspires you. And home is a place that you never want to leave. Hey Homeworthy, thanks for stopping by my home in Scottsdale, Arizona. See you next time.
Thanks for watching. Go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content and shopping guides.